Vincent Graves pressed the barrel of his gun against Charlotte Hayes's swollen belly and smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a hesitant one, the kind of smile a man wears when he has already decided the outcome and is simply enjoying the last few seconds before it arrives. "Tell me where you hid the drives," he said, "or I'll make sure this child never takes a single breath outside this room." Charlotte didn't scream. She had learned months ago that screaming only amused him. She pressed both hands flat against her stomach, 7 months of life shifting and kicking beneath her palms, and she looked Vincent Graves directly in the eye and said nothing. That silence cost her 3 cracked ribs and a night locked in the basement without water. But she didn't give him the drives. If you were in her place, 7 months pregnant, alone, bruised, with no one coming for you, what would you have done? Before we go further, if this is your first time on this channel, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. Stories like this one, raw, real, and impossible to put down, go up every week. And drop a comment right now telling me what city or country you're watching from. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. Now hit that like button and let's get into it. The private terminal at Logan International was the kind of place that didn't appear on any airport map. No signage. No public access corridor. A single unmarked door off a maintenance hallway, badge-controlled, monitored by 4 cameras, and 2 men who did not wear uniforms, but whose jackets hung wrong at the left shoulder in a way that anyone with experience would recognize immediately. Damian Cross knew the terminal well. He had used it 11 times in the past 2 years. It was where power arrived and departed without the inconvenience of being seen. He stood 30 feet from the glass entry doors with his hands in his coat pockets and his jaw set at the angle his security team had privately named the negotiating angle. Not quite a frown, not quite neutral, just tight enough to communicate that the next few hours mattered, and he was aware of exactly how much they mattered. Marcus Webb, his head of personal security, stood 2 steps behind and to the right. Neither man spoke. They had worked together long enough that silence between them was a language of its own. The flight from Boston to JFK had been delayed 40 minutes. That meant Victoria Hawthorne, the woman Damian had agreed to marry in an arrangement that would merge the Hawthorne network along the New England corridor with the Cross Syndicate's mid-Atlantic operations, would arrive closer to 9 than 8:30. Small delay. Manageable. Damian checked his watch not because he didn't know the time, but because the gesture gave his hands something to do. 8 years of building the Cross Syndicate had taught him how to keep his face neutral in rooms where revealing anything was the same as surrendering it. He had learned to dress the part of a man who moved through the world on his own terms. Tailored charcoal coat, no tie, shoes that cost more than most people's monthly rent, but were worn without the self-consciousness that would have made them obvious. He had learned to speak in a register that made people lean slightly forward without understanding why. He had learned, above almost everything else, how to want something privately while showing the world an expression of complete indifference. What he had not learned, and would not learn until this morning, was that some things cannot be managed by posture and preparation. The terminal's arrivals area was sparse at this hour. A handful of private passengers filtered through the glass doors in the loose, unhurried way of people whose schedules belonged to them. A corporate delegation heading to a 9 o'clock meeting in the financial district. 2 men in matching dark suits who carried themselves like diplomatic security. An older woman in cashmere with the specific brand of patience that came from a lifetime of waiting in premium spaces. Damian's eyes moved across all of it in a single practice sweep and registered nothing unusual. Then his gaze snagged. She was 60 yards away, moving along the far wall of the departures corridor, not the arrival side, the wrong side entirely, and she was walking the way someone walks when every step is a decision they have to make consciously. Right foot, now the left, don't stop, don't stop. His brain processed the coat first. Oversized, dark green, clearly not hers, too broad at the shoulders, hemmed to a length that suggested the original owner was several inches taller. The kind of coat you borrow when you need warmth immediately and don't have time to care what it looks like. Then the shape beneath the coat. Then the limp. Then the angle of her face as she glanced over her shoulder at something behind her. And even from 60 yards, even after 8 months, Damian Cross recognized Charlotte Hayes the way you recognize a song you haven't heard in years. Instantly, before you've had time to think about whether you actually remember it. His body moved before his mind gave the instruction. "Sir," Marcus started. Damian was already walking, Not quickly enough to draw attention. He had enough control left for that. But directly, without deviation, crossing the terminal floor on a diagonal line that cut through the departures corridor and would intersect with her path in approximately 45 seconds. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't look at it. It would be the Hawthorne liaison confirming arrival time. That call could wait. That entire world could wait. Charlotte hadn't seen him yet. She was focused on what was ahead of her, the international departures gate at the far end of the corridor, still another 120 feet away. Her right hand gripped the strap of a battered travel bag across her body. Her left hand rested against her stomach in the particular way that isn't a gesture. It's an instinct. The hand of someone protecting something she cannot afford to lose. Damien counted the seconds. At 30 yards, he saw the bruises. They circled her throat like something had been pressed there with deliberate force. Yellow-green at the edges, old enough to be healing, recent enough to be still visible even under the terminal's overhead light. The kind of bruising that has a specific shape, a specific cause. Something cold moved through his chest. At 15 yards, she turned her head and saw him. The reaction was not what he expected. He had told himself, in the back of his mind, that if he ever encountered Charlotte again, a scenario he had chosen to consider unlikely, she might cry. She might rage. She might deliver the kind of confrontation that people carry around for months rehearsing. He had not been certain what he wanted her reaction to be. He had been careful, for 8 months, not to examine that particular question. What Charlotte did was stop walking, not with relief, not with anger, with the flat, braced stillness of someone who has just recognized a threat. Her chin came up slightly. Her right hand tightened on the bag strap. Her eyes, he remembered them very well, gray and sharp, and always doing the work of reading the room before her mouth opened, went absolutely still. She looked at him the way you look at something coming toward you that you cannot outrun. He stopped 3 feet in front of her. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The terminal moved around them, a family with rolling luggage, the PA system announcing a gate change, the distant percussion of security doors, and all of it existed at the wrong distance, like sound heard through water. Charlotte. His own voice surprised him. He hadn't decided what to say first. Don't. Her voice was rough. Not from emotion, from damage. Something had affected her throat beyond the bruising visible at the surface. When she swallowed, the muscles of her jaw tensed in a way that meant it cost her something. You need to keep walking, she said. Her eyes moved past him, scanning the terminal. You need to not be standing next to me right now. What happened to your throat? It wasn't a question. He knew the shape of violence. He had ordered it often enough. He knew the difference between an accident and a hand. Charlotte's eyes came back to his face, and for a fraction of a second something real moved through them. Not relief, not softness, something more complicated than either. And then it was gone. I'm leaving, she said. I have a flight. You're not taking it. Damien, who did this to you? She made a sound that might have been a short, humorless laugh if her throat had been working properly. You don't get to ask me that. He didn't argue the point. She wasn't wrong. He had forfeited any claim to that kind of question 8 months ago in a 15-minute conversation in his office, during which he had been precise and clinical and deliberately final in a way that had been intended to protect him from exactly this, from caring what happened to her afterward. The baby, he said. She flinched. A small movement, barely visible, but it was the first involuntary thing she'd done since she spotted him, and it told him more than her face was willing to. How far along? Damien. Her voice dropped. Not softer, sharper. The roughness in it made the consonants catch. There are people in this airport right now who will kill both of us if they see us talking. Do you understand that? This is not the moment for you to ask me questions. Then let's get out of the airport. You're not flying anywhere in this condition. He said it without raising his voice. Look at yourself. It was the wrong thing to say. He knew it immediately. Something in her expression closed down like a door being shut from the inside, and she straightened her spine in a way that probably cost her something given how she'd been moving. I've been looking at myself for 7 months, she said. I don't need you to do it for me. 7 months. He did the calculation without wanting to. Charlotte. Don't. Is the baby mine? The question landed in the space between them like something dropped from a height. She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes went to the floor, and for a moment she was very still, stillness that wasn't peace but the opposite, the stillness of someone who is deciding how much truth this situation can carry. When she looked up, her face had gone through some internal rearrangement that he couldn't fully read. "Yes," she said, "and that's exactly why I'm leaving. Because the people who have been holding me for 7 months know what she is to you, and the only way to keep her safe is to get her out of the country before they realize I'm gone." Damian Cross had negotiated with federal prosecutors and rival syndicate leaders and hostile foreign operators in 3 countries, and he had never felt the ground shift under him the way it shifted in that moment. A daughter. I was going to have a daughter. And Charlotte had been held, she had said holding me, past tense, which meant she had escaped, which meant she was running right now, in this terminal, with bruises on her throat and a baby at 7 months in a travel bag that didn't belong to her. And she had been doing all of this alone. "Who has been holding you?" he said. His voice was different now. Even Marcus, 15 feet behind him, would have heard the difference. Charlotte shook her head. "It doesn't matter. What matters is I need to be on that flight in—" She checked nothing. She had no watch. She was calculating from memory. 22 minutes. "And I need you to walk away from me right now so they don't clock you standing here." "Who?" Damian said. She looked at him for a long moment. Looked at him the way you look at something you've already decided about, but are giving one final chance to prove you wrong. "Vincent Graves," she said. The name sat in the air between them. Damian knew the name. He knew the man. Vincent Graves operated a criminal network out of Providence that had spent 4 years trying to expand north into territory that Damian controlled. 2 years ago they had reached an uneasy border. Not an agreement, not a peace, just a mutual decision that the cost of open war wasn't worth it yet. Vincent was careful, strategic, patient in a way that had always made him more dangerous than the louder, messier operators in the region. And for 7 months, Charlotte Hayes had been inside his compound. "How did you—" "He offered me a job," she said. Her voice had gone flat in the particular way of someone reporting facts they have already spent too much time feeling. "3 weeks after you let me go. No one legitimate would hire me. You know what your name attached to someone's history does to their employment options." She said it without accusation. That was almost harder than if she'd said it with accusation. "The position seemed real, accounting. I thought it was independent enough that it didn't matter who he was." She shifted the bag on her shoulder. Her jaw tightened at the movement. "He found out about the pregnancy 2 months in. After that I wasn't an employee anymore." The cold thing in Damian's chest had been expanding steadily since he first crossed the terminal floor. It had a weight and a shape now. It sat behind his sternum and pressed outward. "Marcus," he said, not turning around. "Already on it," Marcus said from 15 feet back. He had moved closer without Damian noticing. "Cars outside, side exit, 40 seconds. Charlotte shook her head. "I can't go with you. The flight goes to where?" Damian asked. She hesitated. "Ireland," she said. "I have a contact in Dublin, someone Vincent doesn't know about. I was going to stay there until—" She stopped. "Until what?" Her expression finished, and the answer to that question was the saddest thing Damian had seen in a long time, because the answer was until the baby was born, and I figured out what came next, and I was doing all of it alone. "You're not flying to Dublin," he said. "You're coming with me." "Damian, I'm not—" "Charlotte." He said her name differently this time, not authoritative, not the voice he used in boardrooms and across tables where the stakes were measured in territory and money and leverage. Something else. Something that had not been in regular use for 8 months and was raw from disuse. "I'm not asking you to trust me. I know I don't have that. I'm asking you to let me get you somewhere safe for the next 48 hours, because you're 7 months pregnant with my daughter, you have someone's handprints on your throat, and you've been running alone long enough." She looked at him. He let her look. He didn't try to fill the silence with more words or with the kind of reasonable-sounding logic that he usually used to move people from one position to another. Her right hand was still gripping the bag strap. Her knuckles had gone white. "If I go with you," she said carefully, "I need you to understand something." "Say it." "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for her." "I know," he said. She held his gaze for 3 more seconds. Then she moved. Not toward him, but alongside him, in the same direction, which was the closest thing to agreement she was willing to offer right now, and Damian accepted it. Marcus fell in step on Charlotte's other side, smoothly and without comment, and the three of them moved toward the side exit while behind them, at the arrivals gate, the doors swung open and Victoria Hawthorne walked through, elegant, composed, exactly on time, into a terminal where the man who was supposed to be waiting for her had already gone. Damien didn't look back. He was done looking at what he'd been building toward. He was looking, for the first time in 8 months, at what he had nearly destroyed. The armored SUV was running at the curb. Rain had started while they were inside. Not heavy, just the persistent gray drizzle that turns concrete the color of old iron. Charlotte climbed in without assistance, which told him something. The door closed behind her. Marcus leaned close before getting in the front. The Hawthorne people are going to know within the next 5 minutes that you walked. Yes, Damien said. That's a billion-dollar alliance you just... Yes, Damien said again. Marcus studied him for a moment with the particular expression of a man who has worked for someone long enough to know when argument is pointless. Then he got in the front without another word. Damien got in beside Charlotte. She had pressed herself against the far door, not dramatically, just as much space as the seat allowed. The automatic positioning of someone who has learned that proximity is not always safe. She was looking out the rain-blurred window at the terminal they were pulling away from. Her right hand had moved back to her stomach. The bag was on her lap. "You're not going to ask me anything else right now," she said. It wasn't a question. "No," he said. "Good." The SUV moved through the airport access road toward the highway, and Charlotte Hayes, 7 months pregnant, bruised, exhausted, and stubbornly, furiously alive, said nothing else, and Damien Cross sat 3 feet away from her in the dark interior of the car and felt the full weight of every decision he had made in the last 8 months settle across his shoulders like something he was going to have to carry for a very long time. He didn't try to put it down. He had earned every pound of it. The highway opened ahead of them, gray and wide in the morning rain, and somewhere inside the travel bag on Charlotte's lap were the answers to questions Damien hadn't thought to ask yet. Answers that would change everything he thought he understood about the war that was already coming for him. He didn't know that yet, but Charlotte did. And she was deciding, mile by mile, in the quiet of the moving car, how much of it to tell him, and when, and whether the man sitting beside her was still the kind of man who deserved to know. The SUV had been moving for 11 minutes before Charlotte spoke. Not to Damien. To the window. Her breath fogged the glass in short, controlled intervals that told him she was managing pain she hadn't mentioned and wasn't going to mention. "Where are we going?" she said. "Maine coast. 2 hours." "You have a property there?" "Yes." "Vincent knows about it?" Damien considered the question. A year ago, he would have said no without hesitation. Now, sitting 3 feet from a woman who had spent 7 months inside Vincent Graves's compound, he found that his certainty about what Vincent knew had quietly collapsed. "Possibly," he said. Charlotte turned from the window. It was the first time she had looked directly at him since getting in the car, and the interior light was better now that they were on the highway, and he could see the full damage in a way the terminal's overhead fluorescence had partially obscured. The bruising at her throat was worse on the left side. Her lower lip had a healed split at the corner that had closed badly. There was a stillness behind her eyes that was not calm. It was the specific stillness of someone who has been afraid for so long that the fear has become structural, part of how they hold themselves upright. "Then we shouldn't go there," she said. "I have a secondary location, off book, not registered to me or any of my holding companies." "How many people know about it?" "2. Marcus and my attorney." She looked at Marcus in the front seat. Marcus did not turn around. "Does your attorney have any connection to Nathan Mercer?" she asked. Damien went still. "Why?" he said. Charlotte's jaw worked for a moment. She looked back at the window and her right hand pressed harder against her stomach. Not a gesture this time, something reflexive, something her body did when her mind went somewhere it didn't want to go. "How long has Nathan been your underboss?" she said. 7 years. "And you trust him?" "I did." She heard the past tense. Her eyes came back to him. "Tell me what you know," he said. "Not yet." She said it quietly, but with a finality that closed the door on the subject. "Not until I know where we're going and who else knows we're in this car." Damien looked at Marcus. "Who knows?" "I pulled the detail back at the terminal," Marcus said. "Called it a change of plans." Reston and Park are on perimeter duty at the Hawthorne arrival. They think you're meeting privately. Nobody has eyes on this vehicle right now except traffic cameras, and we switched plates at the airport garage. Your people are going to start asking questions, Charlotte said. When your arrangement with the Hawthorne woman falls apart, when you don't show for whatever meeting you had planned. Let me worry about that. I am worrying about it, she said with an edge that surprised him. Because the last time I assumed someone else was handling the variables, I ended up in a basement in Providence with zip ties on my wrists for 6 days. So forgive me if I want to understand the full picture. The car was quiet for a moment. 6 days, Damien said, the first time I tried to run. She said it the same way someone reports a weather event. Informational. Stripped of the feeling she had clearly decided not to spend in front of him. He put me in the basement for 6 days. After that, he moved me to a room on the second floor with a window that had a drop sensor on it. More comfortable, still locked. Damien looked at his own hands resting on his knees. He turned them over once and turned them back. Charlotte, don't. Her voice didn't rise. It just became very precise. Whatever you're about to say, don't say it yet. There's things I need to tell you first, and if you start apologizing or explaining before I've said them, I'm going to lose the nerve to say them at all, and they're more important than your guilt right now. He closed his mouth. She breathed for a moment, in through the nose, out slow. Her free hand found the zipper of the travel bag on her lap and touched it without opening it, the way you touch something you've been guarding for so long. The touching itself has become a habit. Vincent has been running a parallel operation inside your syndicate for 7 months, she said. I don't know how it started. I don't know if he recruited Nathan or if Nathan approached him. What I know is what I heard and what I copied. Damien said nothing. He has financial records, routing information for 4 of your primary shell accounts, meeting schedules, security rotations for your main properties. She paused. And the full logistical plan for the Alliance celebration with the Hawthorns. Venue, guest list, arrival and departure routes for every principal, including you. The highway moved under them. He's going to kill you at the celebration, Charlotte said. That's the plan, not before. At the event, with enough witnesses and chaos that it looks like an external attack. And then Nathan steps in, claims leadership during the crisis, and Vincent absorbs the northern operations within 60 days. Damien Cross sat very still. He was not a man who panicked. Panic was a luxury that his specific life had burned out of him early. What he did instead, when something large and dangerous entered his field of awareness, was go very quiet and very precise and begin to think in sequences. What is true? What needs to happen? In what order? He thought through the Alliance celebration. 11 days away. Waterfront venue in Boston. He had approved the guest list himself. Nathan had handled the security arrangements. The flash drives, he said. Charlotte's hand tightened on the bag zipper. 2 of them, she said. Everything I could copy before I ran. 7 months of ledgers, communications, wire transfer records, meeting logs. She swallowed, and the movement made her jaw tighten again. I hid them inside the bag lining. Vincent's people searched me twice before I got through the terminal. They were looking for a phone. They didn't think about the bag. How did you get out of the compound? For the first time since getting in the car, something crossed her face that wasn't controlled. A flicker. There and gone. The doctor he brought in to monitor the pregnancy, she said. He wasn't one of Vincent's people. He was a contractor. Came in from outside once a month. Last visit, 3 days ago, I slipped a note into his coat pocket. Just an address and a time. She looked at the bag. He left a door code on a piece of paper in the examination room trash. I don't know why he helped me. I didn't ask. I was at the service entrance at 4 this morning, and I walked to a bus stop, and I took 2 buses to the airport, and I used the last of the cash I'd been collecting for 4 months to buy a ticket. 4 months. I've been planning since month 3. She said it without pride. Just fact. I knew he wasn't going to let me go after the baby was born. I knew what I was to him and what she was to him, so I started planning. Damien thought about a woman 7 months pregnant, locked in a room with a drop sensor on the window, quietly memorizing guard rotations and collecting small amounts of cash from wherever cash was accessible and copying criminal ledgers in secret and hiding evidence in a bag lining and waiting, month after month, for the specific window that would let her walk out. He thought about what kind of person that required you to be. He had known Charlotte Hayes for 2 years before he ended things. He had known she was intelligent. He had built an entire layer of his financial structure on her intelligence. He had known she was disciplined and precise and capable of operating in environments that would have broken people with more obvious toughness. He had not known, until right now, what she was actually made of. The SUV took an exit ramp and Marcus's voice came from the front, quiet and neutral. 30 minutes out, I'm going to run a sweep protocol on approach. Do it, Damien said. Charlotte had gone back to looking at the window. The rain had thickened. The highway lights made yellow smears across the glass. Nathan's going to know by now, she said, that I'm gone. Vincent will have called him within an hour of my disappearance. Probably. And Nathan's going to know that you were at the airport this morning. Yes. So they both know that there's a chance I found you. She turned from the window again. There was something in her expression now that was almost clinical. The face she used to wear when she was working through a financial problem, stripping it to its essential architecture. Which means, whatever they had planned for the celebration, the timeline just accelerated. Damien looked at her. She looked back. You understand that, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, he said. And you're going to do something about Nathan tonight. Yes. She held his gaze a moment longer. Something moved through her expression that was complicated. Not trust, not quite, but perhaps the recognition that the man in front of her was at least competent in the specific ways that the next 48 hours required. Okay, she said, and turned back to the window. The secondary property sat on 2.5 acres above a rocky inlet, accessible by a single-lane road that required knowing it existed. The house itself was low and angular, built into the hillside in a way that made it nearly invisible from the water. No neighbors within a mile. The kind of place you choose when invisibility is a feature rather than a drawback. Marcus did the approach sweep, drove past, looped a 2-mile perimeter, came back via the alternate access trail. Nothing waiting, no vehicles, no disturbance at the exterior sensors, no sign that anyone had been near the property. Charlotte got out of the SUV without waiting for the door to be opened. She stood for a moment in the rain, not moving, just standing, like she needed to confirm that she was outside, that there was no wall within arm's reach. Her face was turned up slightly, eyes closed. Damien watched her for a moment from beside the car and said nothing. She opened her eyes, looked at the house, and walked toward it. Inside, Marcus swept the interior while Damien guided Charlotte to the main room, a low-ceilinged space with a stone fireplace and the specific spareness of a place that exists for function rather than comfort. She lowered herself onto the couch with the careful attention of a woman who had learned to respect her own body's complaints, and she set the travel bag on the cushion beside her and unzipped it. Her hands moved to the interior lining, to a seam that ran along the bottom edge. She pressed a specific point, and the seam gave way along a hidden line of stitches, and she reached in and produced 2 flash drives. Small, black, unremarkable. She held them out toward Damien. He took them, turned them over in his palm. Everything is organized by date, she said. The earliest files are from month 2. The financial records are labeled with the shell company names. The communications, most of them are text transcriptions. I couldn't get direct access to his encrypted server, but I could see his screen during certain meetings. I wrote down everything I could remember within an hour of seeing it. He looked at her. You memorized them. I wrote them down. Where? In a notebook that I burned 2 weeks ago when I was worried he was going to search the room again. By then I'd already transferred everything to the drives. She pressed her back against the couch cushion with a small, controlled exhale. The communications with Nathan are in a separate folder. Dates, amounts, what was exchanged, 7 months of it. Damien closed his hand around the drives. He should have called his tech person immediately. Should have had the drives read and verified within the hour. Every operational instinct he had was pushing him toward his phone, toward Marcus, toward the machinery of response and countermove that his organization existed to execute. Instead, he stood in the middle of the room holding 2 flash drives and looked at the woman on the couch, who had spent 7 months inside a locked room building, him the weapon he didn't know he needed, and he said, "When did you last eat something?" Charlotte blinked. Of all the things she had apparently been prepared for him to say, that wasn't one of them. "This morning," she said. "At the airport." "Before that?" A pause. "Yesterday afternoon." "Marcus." Damien didn't raise his voice. "Kitchen stocked," Marcus said from the hallway. "I'll handle it." Charlotte was looking at Damien with an expression he couldn't fully classify. Not gratitude. She wasn't there yet, and he didn't expect her to be. Something more wary than that. The look of someone recalibrating, adjusting a prediction that had come back slightly wrong. I need to ask you something, she said. Go ahead. The man you were at the airport to meet. She said it carefully. The Hawthorne arrangement. It's done. You can't just, it's $1 billion. It's done, he said again. Same tone. No emphasis added, because emphasis would have implied it was a difficult statement, and it wasn't. It was the simplest decision he had made in 8 months. Charlotte's jaw tightened. I'm not the reason you should be ending that arrangement. The arrangement should end because Nathan's been feeding Vincent your strategic plans. And if you walk into that celebration in 11 days, you will be walking into your own execution. That's the reason. Those are both reasons, Damien said. I need you to be clear about which one is driving you, because if you're making operational decisions with me as a variable, that is a problem. That's the kind of thinking that creates blind spots. He looked at her for a long moment. You spent 7 months in a locked room, he said, and you came out still thinking in terms of strategic liability. I came out, she said flatly, because I thought in terms of strategic liability. It's the only reason I'm sitting here. He didn't have an answer to that. She was right, and they both knew it, and the rightness of it sat between them with a weight that had her name on it, and his name on it, and 8 months of choices on it that he could not undo. Marcus appeared from the kitchen. He stood in the doorway with the expression of a man who has walked into a room and immediately understood he should deliver his information and leave. Drive's reading clean, he said to Damien. I pulled the first folder, the Nathan files. He paused. You're going to want to see them. Damien went to the doorway, took the laptop Marcus was holding, looked at the open folder. The first file was a payment record, clean, clearly documented, the kind of financial record a careful person builds when they want evidence they can use as leverage later. 42 payments over 7 months. The amounts varied, sometimes small, sometimes significant, but the pattern was unmistakable and the routing was clear, and the name on the receiving account, buried under 2 layers of shell companies but ultimately traceable to a single individual, was Nathan Mercer. Damien had known Nathan Mercer since Nathan was 23 years old running collections in South Boston. He had brought Nathan inside the organization himself, had promoted him, trusted him, given him access to every level of the operation that mattered. 7 years. He looked at the file for a long time. There's more, Marcus said quietly. The meeting logs. He met with Graves directly, 4 times, once here in Maine. Damien looked up. The Maine meeting was 6 weeks ago, Marcus said, at a restaurant in Portland. Nathan told you he was visiting his sister that weekend. Damien remembered the weekend. He had been in Washington for a different meeting. He had texted Nathan twice about something unrelated, and Nathan had responded within minutes both times, cheerful and normal, and completely without the specific quality of a man who was sitting across a table from someone planning to have Damien Cross killed. He closed the laptop. He walked back into the main room. Charlotte was watching him from the couch. She had read his face before he crossed the threshold, and she knew what he'd seen without him saying it. I'm sorry, she said. And she meant it in the specific way of someone who knows that discovering you've been betrayed by someone you loved and trusted is a particular kind of wound, and who has personal and recent experience with what that wound feels like. Damien set the laptop on the table. He stood with his back to her for a moment, looking at nothing. How many people in your organization have had direct contact with Nathan in the last 30 days? She asked. He turned around. That's what I need to know, she said. Her voice had changed again. Not softer, but more focused. The clinical edge that appeared when she was working. Because if Nathan knew I was going to the airport this morning, if Vincent called him when I disappeared, there may be people inside your network who already have new instructions. And those people are going to be at the celebration in 11 days. She was right. He knew she was right. He had gone from a morning that was supposed to be controlled and calculated and moving toward a specific, profitable future, to standing in a safe house in Maine, holding 7 months of his trusted underboss's betrayal in his hands. And the woman who had survived to bring him that evidence was sitting on his couch, 7 months pregnant, and asking him operational questions because that was how her mind worked. That was what she had built herself into in the years since he had known her. And it was also, he understood this for the first time with complete clarity, the reason she was still alive. "I need to make a call," he said. "Who to?" "My attorney. He's the only person outside this room who knows about this property." "Does he know Nathan?" "Professionally, not personally." "Is there any scenario in which Nathan could have learned about this property through your attorney?" Damien thought about it. Thought about it honestly rather than defensively, which was harder. "I don't know," he said. Charlotte nodded, as if the honest answer, even an uncertain one, confirmed something she'd suspected about the complexity of what they were inside. "Then before you make that call," she said, "I need to tell you the last thing. The thing I didn't say in the car." He waited. She picked up the travel bag, reached back into the hidden compartment and produced something else, a folded piece of paper, worn at the creases from being handled many times, edges soft with use. She held it out. He crossed the room and took it and unfolded it. It was a hand-drawn diagram. Floor plan, room dimensions estimated by eye, guard positions marked with small X's, timing notations written in the margins in Charlotte's precise, tight handwriting. 2 pages worth of information, both sides covered. "Vincent's compound," she said. "Every room I could access or observe. Guard rotations, shift change times, camera angles, the blind spot on the east wall, where the sensor has been malfunctioning for 3 months. The armory location, the room where he keeps his personal server." She paused. "And the room where he has been storing the documentation he plans to release to federal authorities about your operations if his own organization is threatened." Damien looked up from the paper. "He built a dead man scenario," Charlotte said. "If anything happens to him or to his operation above a threshold he set, the documentation goes automatically to 3 different federal offices. He told me about it during the 3rd month. He wanted me to understand that using what I knew against him wasn't an option." Her eyes met his. "He didn't know I was copying everything anyway." The fire in the stone fireplace crackled. Rain hit the windows with a sound like thrown gravel. "He has enough to destroy you," Charlotte said. "Not just damage, destroy. Federal prosecution, asset seizure, full exposure of the East Coast network. That's what goes out if he dies, or if his organization collapses." Damien looked at the diagram in his hands, then at the woman who had drawn it. "So you can't just remove him," she said. "You have to find the server, disable the dead man file, and you have to do it before you move against him." She let that sit for a moment. "And you have to do all of it before the celebration, because if you walk into that event without this resolved, you're walking into a room where your own underboss has arranged your death, and the one man who built the trap has a switch that destroys your entire life if he gets touched." Outside, the rain was coming harder now. Through the window, the Atlantic was the color of iron. Damien Cross stood in the middle of the room with a floor plan in one hand and 7 months of betrayal on the table behind him, and his daughter's mother on the couch in front of him. And he understood, with the specific clarity of a man who has just run out of the kind of options that preserve comfort, that there was no version of the next 11 days that did not require him to go directly at the most dangerous situation of his life, with no margin and no safety and no way back to the morning he had planned. He folded the diagram, put it in his inside coat pocket. "Get some rest," he said to Charlotte. His voice was steady. It surprised even him. "I need 2 hours to start working through this. Then we need to talk about the server location and whether there's a way to access the compound without triggering the exterior sensors." Charlotte looked at him with those gray eyes that had been reading rooms and people for as long as he had known her, and she said, "You're going in yourself." It wasn't a question. "Yes," he said. She was quiet for a moment. "I mapped the east wall blind spot for a reason," she said finally. "I knew whoever came would need it." She had mapped it for him. She had not known, when she drew that diagram in secret in a locked room, whether Damien Cross would ever see it, or whether it would matter, or whether anyone was coming at all. And she had drawn it anyway, with the same precision and the same stubborn, forward-facing intelligence that had kept her alive for 7 months when a lesser person would have surrendered. He didn't say thank you. The words were inadequate, and they both knew it. He just nodded once and turned toward the hallway where Marcus was waiting, and began the work of dismantling the trap that had been built around both of them while he wasn't paying attention. Marcus had the laptop open on the kitchen table when Damien walked in, and the look on his face was the specific look of a man who has found something he wishes he hadn't. "Talk," Damien said. "The Nathan files go deeper than the payment records." Marcus turned the screen. He wasn't just feeding Vincent operational intel. He's been building a separate financial structure for 14 months, predates the Graves arrangement by 7 months. Damien pulled out a chair and sat. Show me. 4 accounts. 2 in the Caymans, 1 in Singapore, 1 in Dublin, under a holding company called Meridian Tusk Limited. Marcus clicked through the folders Charlotte had organized with the kind of methodical clarity that made Damien's chest tighten in a way he didn't examine. The Dublin account received transfers from 3 of your primary shell structures, not large amounts individually, under the threshold that triggers internal review, but consistent, monthly. Over 14 months, that's approximately 4.3 million moved sideways. Damien looked at the numbers. He wasn't just selling me out to Vincent, he said. He was building a landing pad. He was planning to walk away, Marcus said. The Graves arrangement was the exit ramp. Your assassination at the celebration was his retirement package. Damien sat with that for a moment. Not with emotion. He set emotion to one side the way you set down something heavy when you need your hands free. But with the cold, architectural attention of a man calculating what a 14-month betrayal actually meant in terms of exposure. Everything Nathan had touched, every operation he had overseen, every contact he had managed, every security arrangement he had personally handled. 14 months of access. Pull his full operational file, Damien said. Everything he's had direct authority over in the last 14 months. I want a list within the hour. Already started. Marcus paused. There's one more thing. The way he said it made Damien go still. Marcus clicked to a different folder, a subdirectory near the bottom of the drive, labeled with a date from 3 months ago. Charlotte organized these separately, Marcus said. I think she wanted them isolated because of what they contain. The folder opened. 3 files. The first was a photograph, a screen capture, slightly blurred, taken on a small device at an angle that suggested a phone held close to a monitor. The image showed a document header. Damien recognized the format immediately because he had approved the format himself 18 months ago for a specific category of internal communications. It was a cross-syndicate operational memo. Author field, N. Mercer. Subject field, secondary protocol, Charlotte Hayes. Damien opened the file. He read it in 40 seconds. He read it again in 30. Then he set the laptop down very carefully and put both hands flat on the table and looked at the wall. The memo was dated 5 months ago. It outlined, in Nathan's precise administrative language, a contingency plan for the event that Charlotte Hayes escaped Vincent Graves's custody before the Alliance celebration. The plan had 2 stages. Stage 1 was recapture. Stage 2, in the event recapture proved impossible, was described as permanent resolution of the liability. Nathan Mercer had written a document authorizing Charlotte's death if she escaped, not Vincent Graves. Nathan, acting under cross-syndicate operational authority, using Damien's organizational structure and the resources of Damien's network to ensure that if Charlotte ran, she would not reach anyone who could hear what she knew. He used your people, Marcus said quietly. The standing order went to 3 of your field operators, men who think they're following legitimate syndicate protocol. Who are they? Marcus said 3 names. Damien knew all 3, had worked with all 3. One of them had been at his side during a particularly ugly piece of business in Baltimore 4 years ago, and Damien had trusted him with his own physical safety. Where are they now? Damien said. That's the problem. Marcus closed the laptop. I started running location checks 20 minutes ago. One of them pinged a cell tower in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, at 6:43 this morning. He looked at Damien. Portsmouth is 90 minutes from here. The house was quiet except for the rain and the fire. Damien was on his feet before the sentence finished. He crossed the hallway in 6 steps and pushed open the door to the main room. Charlotte was not on the couch. His heart did something that he did not have a word for. Then he heard water running through the wall, the bathroom, the door slightly ajar, the light strip visible under it, and he stopped moving and stood in the middle of the room and breathed out once, slowly, through his nose. She was washing her hands. He could hear it. Just that. Normal domestic sound of water and the creak of old pipes. He stood there until the water stopped. Until the door opened and Charlotte came out and looked at him, standing in the middle of the room, and read his face immediately. What happened? She said. We need to move you. Her chin came up. Why? Nathan issued a standing order 5 months ago. 3 of my field operators have been tasked with permanent resolution if you escaped. One of them is 90 minutes from this location. Charlotte's face did not collapse. He watched it carefully because he needed to see what she was, in the truest sense, made of in this moment. And what he saw was that her face went through something rapid and internal, something that had the shape of fear, but did not stay as fear, that moved through her like a current and came out the other side as something harder and more directed. How did they find us? She said. They may not have. The Portsmouth ping could be coincidence, but I'm not treating it as coincidence. If Nathan knows I was at Logan this morning, he knows I found you. If he knows I found you and he has people tasked with finding me... She stopped. Her hand had gone to her stomach. He'd assume you'd use a property he doesn't know about, so he wouldn't look for a known location. He'd look for movement. Her eyes sharpened. The plates. We switched them at the garage. Your garage or a public facility? Damien looked at Marcus in the hallway. Airport public garage, Marcus said. Level 3. Camera coverage, Charlotte said. Marcus said nothing, which was its own answer. Charlotte looked at Damien. If Nathan has anyone watching airport camera feeds, and if he's been running intelligence operations inside your organization for 14 months, he does. They have the plate switch on camera. They have the new plates. They ran them and they have a vehicle description. She was right. Damien could see the logic assembling in real time, and it was airtight, and it meant that the property Marcus had assessed as secure 40 minutes ago was potentially already being located. Get your coat, Damien said. I don't have a coat. I have the one I borrowed. Get it. She was already moving. She picked up the travel bag from the couch, empty now, the drives in Damien's pocket, the diagram in his coat, and slung it across her body with the automatic efficiency of someone who has learned not to leave anything behind. Where are we going? She said. There's a boat at the inlet. 40 minutes south, there's a secondary dock and a vehicle I've never registered to anything. We go by water. She looked at him. I can manage a boat. I know. I'm just telling you I don't need Charlotte. He said it without impatience. I know. They moved through the house in under 2 minutes. Marcus killed the interior lights and the fireplace gas feed and activated the exterior sensors on a delay that would trigger a false perimeter alarm if anyone approached from the road. A 5-minute window that would read as a sensor malfunction before going active, enough to make any approaching team hesitate and regroup. Outside, the rain was coming sideways, cold enough to sting. Charlotte pulled the oversized green coat tighter and moved without complaint. Down the hillside path toward the inlet, one hand on the rope guide rail that ran between 2 posts driven into the rock, the other across her stomach. Damien stayed a half step behind her. Not to watch her, to be there if the path, which was slick with rain and uneven at the lower switchback, gave her trouble. She didn't slip. Her balance was adapted to the weight she was carrying in a way that spoke of months of recalibration, the body's quiet engineering of its own new reality. The boat was a 22-foot center console, kept under a tarp that Marcus pulled back with practiced efficiency. It started on the first turn. Marcus took the wheel. Damien helped Charlotte aboard. She took his hand without comment, stepped over the gunwale, and moved to the protected position behind the console without being directed. The inlet opened to open water in 4 minutes, and Marcus pushed the throttle to 3/4, and the boat came up on plane and the rain hit them horizontally, and Charlotte gripped the console rail with both hands and looked straight ahead into the gray Atlantic and said nothing. Damien stood beside her. The cold was significant. He watched her jaw set against it and said nothing either. At the 12-minute mark, Marcus cut the throttle suddenly. Vessel off the port bow, he said. Running dark. Damien looked. There, 200 yards, barely visible in the rain. A vessel sitting low in the water with no running lights. Not moving, just sitting. Fishing boat, Charlotte said. At 7 in the morning in 40-degree rain with no lights, Marcus said. Nobody said anything for a moment. Can you go around? Damien said. Wide around, yes. Adds 15 minutes. Go. Marcus brought the wheel over and the boat swung south, giving the dark vessel a wide berth. Damien watched it as they arced around. It did not move. It did not turn on any lights. It sat in the water like something waiting to see which way they went. When it was 400 yards behind them, Marcus brought the throttle back up. It may be nothing, Marcus said. Yes, Damien said. Neither of them believed it. They made the secondary dock in 38 minutes. The dock was a private structure at the end of a gravel road belonging to a marine salvage company that Damien held through 4 layers of corporate structure. The vehicle was a gray pickup, 6 years old, registered to a name that had no connection to him or any of his holdings. Charlotte got off the boat under her own power and stood on the dock and looked at her own hands for a moment. They were shaking. Not dramatically, a fine, persistent tremor that she noticed, and that she closed into fists and released deliberately. "I'm fine," she said, before he could say anything. "Okay," he said. "The cold." "I know." She looked at him. The tremor in her hands was mostly gone. "Stop being decent to me right now. It's harder to stay angry at you when you're decent." "You can stay angry." "I plan to." She picked up the bag. "Let's go." In the truck, with the heat running and the dock disappearing behind them, Damien's phone, a secondary device, encrypted, known to no one inside his organization, buzzed once. He looked at the screen. A text from a number he did not recognize. 8 words. "Nathan knows the main property. Leave now. R." He stared at it. Marcus, driving, glanced over. "What?" Damien held up the phone. Marcus read it and looked back at the road without changing his expression. "Who's R?" he said. "I don't know." Charlotte in the back seat said nothing, but in the rearview mirror Damien could see her eyes, and they had gone to a place that was very still and very internal, and he had learned enough in the last 2 hours to understand what that particular stillness meant. "Charlotte," he said. "I don't know who R is," she said. "I swear to you I don't." "But—" She was quiet for a moment. Outside, the main coastline moved past in gray and green. "There was a man," she said slowly, "at Vincent's compound, not staff. He came twice that I saw. He and Vincent argued the second time. I could hear it from the hallway, but not clearly. 2 weeks later, Vincent had a different encrypted phone, and one of the guards told me the previous one had been compromised." She paused. "I don't know his name. I never saw his face clearly, but Vincent called him something once, just once, to someone on the phone. He said—" She stopped. "What did he say?" Damien said. "He said, 'Reston is getting sentimental.'" The air in the truck changed. Damien went very still. Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel. Reston. One of the 3 names Marcus had given him 40 minutes ago. One of the 3 field operators Nathan had tasked with Charlotte's permanent resolution. The man who had been at Damien's side in Baltimore 4 years ago. The man Damien had trusted with his own physical safety. The man who had just texted a warning from an unknown number. "He's one of the 3, Damien said. "Yes," Marcus said. "Nathan assigned him to find Charlotte." "Yes." "And he just warned us that Nathan knows the main location." Damien looked at the phone. "Which means either Reston has been running a double game the whole time and is now choosing a side, or Nathan sent that message himself through Reston's access to flush us toward a specific route," Marcus said. The silence in the truck was the silence of people doing fast, uncomfortable calculations. "If it's Nathan flushing us," Charlotte said from the back, "where would he want us to go?" "Away from the coast," Marcus said. "Inland, toward the highway." "Which is where coverage is easier," Charlotte said. "Controlled. He can set a perimeter on a highway. He can't set a perimeter on open water." "We need to go back to the water," Damien said. "We just got off the water," Marcus said. "I know." Marcus drove for a moment without speaking. "The boat's at the salvage dock. We go back, we're exposed on the dock for 5 minutes minimum." "What's the alternative?" "Drive north. I have a contact in Bangor. Nathan will have the highway routes covered if he's running a flush," Damien said. "And if Reston's message is genuine, Nathan already knows we were at the main property, which means he has the general area. Highways are traps." Charlotte's voice from the back seat was quiet and precise. "There's a third option." Both men looked at the rear view. "Stop running," she said. Stop letting him set the geometry." Damien turned in his seat to look at her directly. She was sitting straight despite everything her body was dealing with. Her gray eyes were clear. The tremor in her hands was gone. "If Nathan thinks we're running, he's moving his people into containment positions," she said. "He's thinking in terms of capture or resolution. He wants to close the problem before we reach anyone who can act on what I know. But he has a timeline problem." She looked at Damien. "He can't move the celebration. It's 11 days out. Too many external parties have confirmed attendance. If he moves it, he explains why. He can't explain why without exposing the plan. So his window for dealing with us is actually very small. He doesn't need to contain the situation forever, Damien said, just until the celebration. Exactly. Which means if we don't run, if we go at him directly, on our own timeline, before he expects it, his entire plan collapses. She shifted in the seat. He's built an operation that depends on you being dead in 11 days. That's the load-bearing element. Remove that, and everything else falls. Damien looked at her. You're talking about moving on Vincent's compound. I'm talking about moving on the server first, the dead man file. Remove that, and then you can move on Vincent and Nathan both without the threat of federal exposure destroying your entire network. To move on the server, I need to be inside the compound. Yes. Vincent's people are on active alert because you escaped this morning. Yes. The compound will be at maximum security posture. I know. She held his gaze. I drew you a map. The truck moved through a small coastal town, a gas station, a hardware store, 3 houses, a church they passed without slowing. The rain had eased to a fine mist that turned the windshield into a gray smear even with the wipers running. Damien's phone buzzed again. Same unknown number, different message. 2 words this time. Clock's running. He showed it to Marcus. Marcus read it and made a sound that wasn't quite a word. Reston, Charlotte said. Possibly. Or Nathan. Possibly. She leaned forward between the seats. Her breath was controlled. Her voice was very low. You need to decide right now whether Reston is an asset or a threat, because if he's genuine, he's inside Nathan's operation, and he's choosing to burn that to warn you, and that means he knows something about the timeline that we don't. And if he's a plant, then every minute we spend discussing it is a minute Nathan uses to close the trap. Damien looked at the phone, then at Charlotte, then at the road. He called the number. It rang 3 times. A man's voice answered, rough, careful, the voice of someone speaking quietly in a space where being heard would be a problem. You shouldn't have called this number, Reston said. You texted it to me. I know, I needed you out of Maine. I didn't expect a call back. Where are you? A pause. Providence. Damien's jaw tightened. You're at the compound. Adjacent. Another pause. Graves moved his timeline this morning when the woman disappeared. The celebration window was always the primary, but there's a secondary trigger now. If he can't find her in 48 hours, he goes to the federal contact and drops the package early. Burns your network as leverage to force her back in. Charlotte was close enough to the phone to hear. Damien watched her face process it. 48 hours. They had not 11 days. They had 48 hours before Vincent Graves, panicking over Charlotte's escape, triggered a dead man protocol that would expose the entire Cross Syndicate to federal prosecution and dismantle everything Damien had built. 11 days had been a problem with room to plan. 48 hours was something else entirely. The server, Damien said. The dead man file. Location. 3rd floor, northeast corner room. The server is behind a false panel in the east wall, behind a bookcase that runs on a floor track. The access code changes every 72 hours. A pause. I know the current code. Why are you telling me this? The silence on the line was long enough that Damien thought the call had dropped. Then Reston said, Because I was told the woman was a liability. I wasn't told she was 7 months pregnant. And I wasn't told that the standing order Nathan gave me was written on Cross Syndicate letterhead without your knowledge. Another pause. I've done a lot of things for a lot of people, Cross. I haven't done that. Damien said nothing. Nathan played me the same way he played you, Reston said. I just figured it out faster. His voice dropped further. I can get you into the compound. The east wall blind spot your woman identified. It's real. But you need to move by midnight. Graves is increasing his security rotation at 0100 when the new guard shift comes in. After that, it's a different problem. And after I'm inside, what are you doing? Getting clear, Reston said. I'm done. The call ended. Damien held the phone for a moment. Charlotte had moved back in her seat. She was looking at the roof of the truck with a specific expression. The expression of someone who has just watched the problem they understood get replaced by a larger problem they are now rapidly working to understand. 48 hours, she said. Yes. You have to go in tonight. Yes. You need people you trust absolutely, people Nathan has had no access to. I have 4, Damien said. Maybe 5. That's not many for a fortified compound at high alert. No, he said. It's not. She was quiet. Outside the mist had thick, the coastline was invisible, and the truck felt very small. There's something I haven't told you, she said. Damien looked at her. About the server. She chose her words with the care of someone who knows the next sentence is going to change things. The dead man file isn't just federal exposure for your network. He waited. Vincent added to it 3 weeks ago, after he realized I'd been copying files. Her voice was steady, but her hand had pressed flat against her stomach again. He told me what he added. He wanted me to know. She looked at Damien directly. He put in a secondary package for certain media contacts, different from the federal one. This one contains documented evidence, real evidence, not manufactured, of 3 murders tied to your organization. 2 from 4 years ago, 1 from 18 months back. Damien knew which ones. He didn't say so. If that package releases, it's not just federal prosecution, Charlotte said. It's public. It's permanent. It's the kind of exposure that follows your daughter for her entire life. Her voice didn't break, but it changed slightly at the word daughter, the way a road changes when it passes over old ground. He told me that specifically. He said he wanted me to understand that there was no version of this where my child had a clean name. The truck had slowed without Marcus consciously reducing speed. Damien could see Marcus's hands on the wheel and the subtle way they had tightened and the way his shoulders had moved, the physical language of a man recalibrating what he understood about what they were inside. Vincent Graves had not just built a trap. He had built a trap with a room inside it, designed specifically for a child who hadn't been born yet. Damien Cross felt something move through him that was not like the cold feeling from before. The cold feeling had been strategic, the recognition of danger and its dimensions. This was different. This was something older and less managed, and it moved from the center of his chest outward, and it had no calculation in it at all. He turned to face forward. The road ran straight ahead into the mist. Marcus, he said. Yeah. Get me to Providence by nightfall. Marcus didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was the voice of a man who has served a specific person for long enough to understand exactly what a sentence like that means when it comes out in a particular tone. I'll need to make 2 calls, Marcus said. Make them. Charlotte said nothing from the back seat, but when Damien glanced at the mirror, she was looking at him, and the expression on her face was not relief and not warmth and not the softening of someone who has been rescued. It was the expression of a woman who has been surviving alone for 7 months, and has now, for the first time, encountered something moving in the same direction she is, and is deciding, carefully and without sentiment, whether to trust the momentum. He looked back at the road. The decision was hers. He had no right to hurry it, and he didn't try. 48 hours. 1 server, 1 code, 1 blind spot in an east wall where a sensor had been malfunctioning for 3 months. And a man who had spent 8 months building an empire he no longer recognized as worth the cost, driving south through coastal Maine toward the most dangerous night of his life, with everything he had failed to protect, sitting in the back seat and everything he stood to lose pressing outward from behind his sternum like a second heartbeat. They made Providence by 6:47 in the evening. Marcus had made his 2 calls from a gas station payphone outside Bath, an artifact from another era that still worked, which Marcus had noted with the grim satisfaction of a man who had always believed in redundant systems. The calls were short, coded in the oblique language that Damien's inner circle used for situations that could not be named directly on any line. By the time the truck crossed into Rhode Island, 3 men were already moving toward a warehouse on the south side of Providence that Damien held through a marine supply company. Men who had no connection to Nathan Mercer. Men who had been with Damien before Nathan existed as a factor, who owed their positions to Damien directly, and whose loyalty had never been tested against a competing offer because Nathan had never known enough about them to make one. Cole Briggs, 41, former military, had been with Damien for 9 years and communicated primarily through silence and the angle of his shoulders. Danny Park, 36. The best tactical reader Damien had ever worked with, the kind of man who walked into a space and immediately understood its geometry in terms of risk and movement without appearing to look at anything in particular. A third man named Gael, who went by no last name, and whom Damien had pulled from a very bad situation in Baltimore 6 years ago, and who had repaid that debt with absolute fidelity ever since. Charlotte stayed in the truck while Damien went inside the warehouse. She did not protest. She had looked at the building, looked at Damien, and said, "I'll be here," which was more trust than he had earned, and he knew it. Inside, the three men stood around a folding table with a single work light overhead. No greetings. Cole handed Damien a coffee that was still hot, which was as close as Cole got to warmth. Damien spread Charlotte's hand-drawn diagram on the table. "East wall," he said. "Blind spot at this corner. Sensor malfunction. Been running 3 months. We have a contact inside who confirms the code for the server room access." He looked at the three faces around the table. "We're going in at 2300. We are not going in for engagement. Primary objective is this room." He pointed. Third floor, northeast corner, server behind a false panel. We disable the dead man file. We extract. We're out. "Security posture," Dan said. "Maximum alert as of this morning. The compound is running hot. Guard rotation increases at 0100, which is why we move at 2300. "How many on the ground?" Cole said. "Unknown. Standard complement is 18 to 22. On alert, possible 30 plus." Cole looked at the diagram. Looked at Gale. Looked back at the diagram. "Contact inside," Danny said. "Verified?" "Verified enough," Damien said. "He warned us out of Maine this morning. He has the server code. He's getting clear before we go in, which means we don't have him as an active asset inside the compound." "We're going in 4, Gale said. It wasn't a complaint. It was a man doing arithmetic." "Marcus on the exterior," Damien said. "Wheel in communication. We're 3 inside." He paused. "I'm taking point." Silence. "You're taking point," Cole said. "Yes." Another silence, different in quality from the first. "All right," Cole said. They spent 90 minutes on the diagram. Danny had a particular gift for translating hand-drawn approximations into workable spatial understanding, and he asked precise questions: door swing direction, stairwell width estimate, whether the guard at the northeast exterior corner moved in a fixed pattern or variable, that told Damien Charlotte's observations had been thorough enough to build on. At 9:15, Damien went back to the truck. Charlotte was awake. She had reclined the seat slightly, and her eyes were closed when he opened the door, but they opened immediately. The eyes of someone who had not been sleeping but resting in the way you rest, when sleep is not something you trust. "How long?" she said. "Hour 45. She sat the seat back up. Her face showed the cost of the hours, the gray-green tinge under her eyes that spoke of sustained physical stress, the way she moved her neck as she straightened as though it ached at the base. But her eyes were clear. Whatever her body was managing, her mind was still running clean. "I need to tell you the server code protocol," she said. "Reston gave me the current code. The code is a 6-digit entry, but there's a secondary confirmation after entry, a manual toggle on the back of the server unit itself that has to be switched off within 30 seconds of the code, or the system interprets it as unauthorized access and triggers the dead man release automatically." She looked at him. "Did Reston tell you that?" Damien went still. "No," he said. "Vincent added it 6 weeks ago after his primary tech person told him the code alone was insufficient as a security measure." She held his gaze. "The toggle is on the back left of the unit. It's a physical switch, red. You flip it down before the 30 seconds or everything releases." "How do you know this?" "Because I was in the room when Vincent's tech person installed it, and I was very good at being invisible." She paused. "I've been invisible for 7 months. You learn to use it." Damien looked at her for a moment. The warehouse light made the shadows under her eyes deeper. She had pressed her back against the seat, and her free hand was on the door armrest, and she was holding herself very straight in the specific way of someone managing pain they consider irrelevant to the current situation. "Charlotte." He said her name the way he had at the airport, not authority, something that had been dormant a long time. "Don't," she said. But it was softer than the previous times she'd said it, slightly worn at the edges. After tonight is after tonight." She looked at the warehouse. "Right now there's a server with a 30-second window and a red toggle switch, and you need to be thinking about that." He nodded. "Flip it down," she said, "within 30 seconds of entering the code. Don't enter the code until you're looking at the unit, because if anything slows you down after entry, I understand. Good. She looked at the windshield. Go. He went. They moved out at 2240. The rain had stopped, which was both useful and not. Useful because visibility was better, not useful because wet ground muffles footsteps and dry ground doesn't. Danny noted it without comment and adjusted his assessment of the east wall approach accordingly. The compound sat on 4 acres north of the city, the kind of property that managed to be both suburban and fortified. A large colonial house set well back from the road, surrounded by mature trees that looked like privacy landscaping and functioned as sightline management. A stone wall ran the perimeter, 8 feet, with the specific top-line treatment that telegraphed its purpose to anyone who understood such things. Marcus parked the truck on a service road a quarter-mile east and ran communication from there. Clean channel, encrypted handsets, one-word protocols. Damien, Cole, Danny, and Gael moved through the tree line on foot. The east wall's blind spot was exactly where Charlotte had marked it, a 12-foot section where the sensor housing on the wall cap was visibly corroded at the mounting bracket, tilted 3 degrees off its intended coverage angle. 3 months of malfunction, she had written in the diagram's margin. Compound maintenance had logged it twice but not repaired it, the kind of institutional delay that large organizations develop when no one feels personally responsible for the gap. Danny went over first, then Gael, then Damien. Cole last, dropping silently onto the estate grounds with the economy of movement that 9 years of working together had made automatic. They held position for 40 seconds. Damien counted. His heartbeat was elevated but controlled. His body understood what it was inside and was running accordingly, the specific physiology of a man who has done dangerous things often enough that danger has its own groove to run in. The guard rotation was visible from the tree line on the interior grounds. 2 men moving in a counterclockwise pattern around the house exterior, timed at approximately 6 minutes per circuit. Charlotte's diagram had estimated 5 to 7. She had been right. Danny signaled. They moved. The northeast exterior corner had a shadow pocket where the motion-sensitive exterior lights coverage ended 8 feet short of the wall due to a mature oak tree whose canopy interrupted the beam. Charlotte had marked this too, with a small arrow and the notation, light gap, oak interference, reliable. They reached the northeast corner of the house with 90 seconds to spare before the guard circuit came back around. The exterior basement window that Charlotte had identified as the service access point, originally a coal chute window, retrofitted with a basic latch that hadn't been upgraded because the basement was used for storage and nobody prioritized storage security, opened on the 3rd try with a tool Danny had brought specifically for that latch type. Inside, the basement was dark and smelled of concrete and old oil and cardboard. They moved by the low red light of a shielded tactical torch, following the stairwell layout from the diagram. First floor was the danger zone. 2 guards stationed inside. Charlotte had noted them as stationary, one at the main entrance, one at the rear corridor. Danny took the corridor route that bypassed both positions, moving through the kitchen and along the east hallway, 3 feet from a door behind which someone was watching television. Damien could hear it, some late-night program with a laugh track, and the surreal ordinariness of it was briefly, deeply strange. 2nd floor. Quiet. 3 doors, all closed. From behind one of them, snoring. 3rd floor. Northeast corner room. The door was locked. Not heavily, a standard interior keyed lock, the kind you put on a private office in a house that already has perimeter security and doesn't expect the threat to come from inside. Gail opened it in 11 seconds. The room was dark. Damien entered and Cole pulled the door closed behind them. The bookcase was on the east wall, exactly where Charlotte had described it. 8 feet wide, floor to ceiling, running on a floor track. Damien found the track by feel, a slight groove in the hardwood that ran perpendicular to the wall for 18 inches. He found the edge of the bookcase and pushed. It moved, smoothly, on the track, swinging outward in an arc that revealed the wall behind it. The false panel was a section of wall that matched the surrounding plaster in texture and color, but didn't quite share its resistance to pressure. Damien pressed the lower right corner and it released, a simple push latch, and the panel swung inward to reveal a shallow alcove. The server unit was compact, black, about the size of a thick briefcase, mounted on a small shelf with a cable running down into the floor. The front face had a numeric keypad with an indicator light that glowed amber. Damien looked at it for a moment. He pulled out the piece of paper on which Reston's code was written, then put it back. He had memorized it in the truck. He did not need the paper. Using paper in a space where it could be dropped was the kind of mistake that the last 12 hours had clarified he could not afford. He entered the code. The indicator light changed from amber to green and began to pulse. 30 seconds. He moved immediately, reaching past the front of the unit, stretching his arm along the left side, fingers searching the back panel surface. The unit was closer to the wall than comfortable, 6 inches of clearance, and his arm had to angle at the shoulder in a way that put immediate pressure on the joint. He felt the switch. Physical toggle, exactly as Charlotte had described, slightly raised from the back panel surface. His fingers found it and confirmed its current position, up, armed, and he pushed it down. The green pulsing light went steady, then went dark. Then the indicator light came back on, white this time, and the unit emitted a single short tone that was quieter than Damien had feared, but still loud enough that all 4 men in the room went completely still for 3 full seconds. Nothing moved in the house. The television laugh track continued 2 floors below. Damien let out a breath through his nose that he had been holding for 28 of the 30 seconds. Cole was at the door. He held up 2 fingers and pointed down. 2 minutes on the guard circuit. They needed to move. Damien looked at the server. The dead man file was disabled. The federal package, the media package, the secondary threat that Vincent Graves had built around an unborn child's future. All of it was sitting inert on a server in a dark room in Providence, and it was going to stay there. He pulled a data device from his jacket. Marcus had prepared it in the warehouse, pre-configured to pull a full mirror of the server contents in under 90 seconds. He plugged it into the server's access port, 87 seconds. The device pulled everything. He took it out, put it in his inside pocket. Cole opened the door. They moved. The descent through the house was controlled and clean until the second floor where something changed. Damien felt it before he heard it, a shift in the quality of the air, a door that had been closed now slightly open, a light that had been off now showing a thin line under a door that hadn't had a line before. Danny felt it too. He stopped. His right hand came up in the flat palm signal that meant everyone freeze and nobody breathe loudly. Down the corridor 20 feet away, a door opened. Not a guard. A man in a bathrobe, heavy-set, moving toward the hallway bathroom with the shuffling inattention of someone half asleep. He reached the bathroom door and went inside without looking down the corridor. 30 seconds. 40. The bathroom light went off. The door opened. The man shuffled back and went into his room, and the door closed. Damien realized his right hand had been on the grip of the weapon at his hip for the entire duration. He took his hand off it. They moved. Down the first floor, through the kitchen, along the east hallway, the laugh track still running behind the closed door, then the rear corridor, then the basement, then the window. They came over the east wall at 2341. Marcus's voice in the earpiece. Clear on perimeter. Move south. They moved south through the tree line, moving fast now, the controlled urgency of men who have made it through the hard part and are now in the transitional space where the danger is still real, but the geometry has changed. The truck was where Marcus had left it, engine running. Damien got in the passenger seat. Cole, Danny, and Gale got in the back. Nobody spoke for the first 30 seconds. Then Danny said, "Clean." "Clean," Gale confirmed. Cole said nothing, which meant the same thing. Damien was looking at the data device in his hand, the mirror of everything on Vincent's server, the dead man file, the financial records, the communications, all of it. "Charlotte," he said. "She's secure," Marcus said. "I moved her to the secondary location 20 minutes ago when you went dark inside. She's at the boatyard office." Damien nodded. He looked out the window as Providence moved past. Streets wet from the earlier rain, streetlights making yellow pools on the pavement. A city that looked entirely ordinary and contained within it none of the violence that had been threaded through the last 14 hours. His shoulder ached where he had extended it at the wrong angle, reaching for the server's back panel. He hadn't noticed it inside the compound. He noticed it now. His hands had a slight tremor that was not fear, but the aftermath of sustained adrenaline, and he pressed them flat against his thighs and felt the tremor work its way out through his palms. At the boatyard, Charlotte was in the office with the heat running, sitting in the chair behind the desk with her coat around her shoulders and a cup of something hot between her hands that the boatyard's overnight watchman, who knew Marcus and asked no questions, had provided. She looked up when Damien came in. She read his face. "Server's down," she said. It wasn't a question. "Server's down. Full mirror extracted." He held up the device. Something moved through her expression. Not relief exactly, too complicated for relief. More like the specific feeling of watching a thing you built survive its hardest test. "The toggle," she said. 22 seconds. She let out a breath. Her hands around the cup tightened briefly and then released. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he said. He sat down across from her. The desk between them was old oak, scratched along one edge where something had been dragged across it. The work light on the desk made the room feel closer than it was. Outside, the water moved in the inlet, quiet and repetitive. "Nathan," she said. "We move on Nathan and Vincent both now, tonight." He put the data device on the desk. "With the dead man file neutralized, we have the initiative. If they find out the server has been accessed, they'll know their leverage is gone and they'll move, but they won't find out before morning at the earliest, and we're not waiting for morning." Charlotte looked at the device, looked at him. "You have 4 men. I need 6 more. I'm making calls in the next 10 minutes. Do you trust the 6? He thought about it honestly. The question no longer felt like bureaucratic caution. It felt like the only question worth asking. "Yes," he said. 3 of them Nathan has never met. 2 of them have been dark for 6 months on an operation in a different state. One of them, he paused. One of them is the reason Nathan never found out about this property. Charlotte was quiet for a moment. "There's something you need to know about the compound layout before you go back in," she said. He waited. "Vincent has a room on this ground floor, southwest corner. He uses it as his private office. That's where he is most nights after 11. He doesn't keep guards inside that room with him. He has a panic room adjacent, but the door is on the interior wall, not the exterior, and it requires his biometric to open." She set down the cup. "Nathan meets him there. Thursdays, usually. But given what happened this morning, you think Nathan's there now?" "I think if Vincent's timeline has collapsed and he's operating in crisis mode and Nathan is his primary operative inside the Cross Syndicate, then yes. I think Nathan is exactly there right now, and I think they're making new plans." Damien looked at her. "You memorized the panic room configuration," he said. "I memorized everything I could see," she said, "in case anyone ever came." In case anyone ever came. He picked up his phone. The next 40 minutes were the controlled violence of pure logistics. Calls made and received, positions confirmed, vehicles moving into a loose perimeter around the compound that closed like a hand making a fist. Damien spoke in short sentences and received shorter ones back, and the operation assembled itself in the dark with the specific efficiency of men who have worked together long enough to move quickly without confusion. At 12:47, Marcus said, "Perimeter is closed." Damien was already in his coat. Charlotte stood up from behind the desk. Her eyes were on him with a directness that he had learned in the past 18 hours was what she looked like when she was about to say something that mattered. "Come back," she said. Not "I forgive you," not "I love you," not any of the things that the 8 months between them still contained like debris after a flood. Just the 2 words. Simple and direct and weighted with everything she wasn't ready to say yet. "Yes," he said. He moved toward the door. "Damien." He stopped. She was still standing behind the desk. Her left hand was flat on the wood surface. Her right was at her stomach. Her face was doing the complicated work of a woman who has decided to say a true thing that costs her something. "She moved this morning," Charlotte said. "In the car, after we left the airport. She kicked twice." A pause. "I thought you should know that." He stood in the doorway and let that land. It landed hard. The way certain true things do when they arrive in the middle of everything else. Not softly, not at a convenient moment, but in the doorway of a boatyard office at 12:50 in the morning with 10 men waiting and one of the most dangerous nights of his life still ahead of him. He looked at Charlotte across the scratched oak desk and the work light and the distance of 8 months and every mistake that lived in that distance. "She's going to have your stubbornness," he said. Charlotte looked at him for a moment. Something moved at the corner of her mouth that wasn't quite a smile but was in the same neighborhood. "Go," she said. He went. Outside, Marcus was at the truck. The night was cold and clear now, stars showing through the broken cloud cover, the air with the sharp mineral smell of coastal New England after rain. Damien pulled his coat against it and got in the vehicle and felt his shoulder ache and felt the data device in his pocket and felt, underneath all of it, the particular sensation of a man who has identified with precision everything he stands to lose. Cole's voice came through the earpiece. In position, compound is lit on the southwest corner, ground floor. Your woman was right. Vincent Graves was in his office. And somewhere in that building, Nathan Mercer, 7 years of loyalty converted into 42 monthly payments and a retirement account in Dublin, was sitting across from him, and they were making plans for a world that was about to come apart. Move, Damien said. The truck pulled out of the boatyard, and the night opened up ahead of them, and Damien Cross drove toward the compound with his hands loose on his knees and his jaw set, and everything he had decided to be running at full speed underneath the surface of his face. The southeast tree line came into view. Cole's position was marked by a single light blink on the tactical channel. One blink, in position, ready. Danny's came 30 seconds later. Then Gale. Then the 6 additional men deployed in the perimeter, coming in as 3 pairs from different compass points, closing the geometry. Damien checked his weapon. Chambered. Safe on. He clicked it off. Marcus stopped the truck at the service road junction and looked at Damien and said, in the voice of a man who has said goodbye in various forms many times, but means it every time, 40 minutes. I'll be here. Damien got out. The tree line was 30 yards. He covered it in under 20 seconds, moving low and fast, his footsteps quiet on the wet ground, and he reached the east wall and found the blind spot without needing to search for it, and went over. On the other side, the compound grounds were bright at the southwest corner, lit windows throwing yellow light onto the lawn, and dark everywhere else. The professional dark of a facility trying to look secure. From across the grounds, muffled by walls and distance, 2 voices. The lower one steady and controlled. The higher one, when Damien focused, had a register that he knew. Nathan. Damien had last heard that voice 2 days ago on an ordinary phone call about ordinary business, and it had sounded like Nathan always sounded, measured, competent, reliable, the voice of a man you'd built 7 years on. Now, moving across the dark lawn of Vincent Graves's compound in the last hour before everything broke open, Damien Cross heard that voice through 60 feet of wall and garden and night air and felt the 7 years collapse into what they actually were. He kept moving. Cole materialized at his left shoulder without sound. Danny appeared on the right. Behind them, Gale and 2 of the additional men fell into a loose wedge formation that required no instruction because they had been briefed and they understood the geometry, and they were very good at what they did. The southwest corner door was 20 feet away. 15. The voices from inside had stopped. In the sudden silence, Damien's instincts sent a signal up his spine that arrived before the information that caused it, and then the information arrived, which was that the light in the southwest window had gone out, and that the cessation of voices and the cessation of light had happened within 2 seconds of each other, which was not coincidence. They knew. Go, Damien said. Cole hit the door. The wood gave on the second impact and the door swung hard and they were inside and the room was empty. The southwest office, exactly as Charlotte had described it, desk and 2 chairs and the interior wall with the panic room door. And the panic room door was sealed and the biometric panel beside it showed a red engaged indicator. Vincent Graves was inside the panic room and the room was empty of Nathan Mercer. Spread, Damien said. His men moved into the corridor. Shouts from the perimeter. Cole's team engaging the guard response that was now coming awake and armed and moving toward the southwest corner. The sounds of a facility going from alert to active in under 60 seconds. The specific percussion of doors and boots and voices that meant the next few minutes were going to be very loud. Damien stood in front of the panic room door. The biometric panel glowed red, sealed from inside. Vincent Graves on the other side with a phone and a server. Access. He believed was still armed and 48 hours left on a timeline he thought he still controlled. Damien looked at the panel, at the door, at the indicator light. Marcus, he said into the earpiece, go. I need the biometric override you pulled from the server mirror. The panic room sequence. A pause. 15 seconds of Marcus working through the data device extraction on his laptop in the truck. Got it, Marcus said. 7 digits. Marcus read them. Damien entered them. The panel held red for 3 seconds that felt considerably longer. Then it went green. The door released with a pneumatic hiss, a heavy door, reinforced, designed to absorb a significant amount of direct force. And it swung outward toward Damien, and he stepped back to let it clear, and then stepped forward into the threshold. Vincent Graves was standing at the back of the small room with a satellite phone in his hand and an expression that moved through several stages in the span of a single second. Shock, calculation, and then something that settled into a particular species of contempt that was the face of a man who has decided that the situation is lost and is choosing how to lose it. He looked at Damien. Damien looked at him. "The server," Vincent said. His voice was controlled, impressively so. "You were inside tonight." "Yes." Vincent looked at the satellite phone in his hand, then at Damien. Then he set the phone down on the small table beside him with a deliberateness that said he understood what the phone was no longer capable of. "The woman," he said. "Yes." "She's been busy." Something moved in his face that was almost admiration and was actually rage wearing a different coat. 7 months, I underestimated her." "Most people do," Damien said. From the corridor behind him, the sounds of the engagement were resolving, shorter, more controlled now, the perimeter collapsing inward in the organized way of a larger force, absorbing a smaller one. Cole's voice in the earpiece. "Ground secure. 3 down, 4 contained. No casualties on our side." "No, Nathan." "Where is he?" Damien said. Vincent smiled. It was a small smile, uninvested in warmth, the smile of a man deploying his last usable asset. "Nathan Mercer left this building 14 minutes ago," Vincent said. "The moment we saw movement in the east wall camera feed, the camera you didn't know about, the secondary one mounted in the oak tree whose canopy conveniently shadows the motion sensor, Nathan was already in a vehicle." He paused. "He has a copy of the federal package on a drive that is not connected to my server. A physical copy, prepared 3 weeks ago for exactly this contingency." The room was very quiet. "If Nathan reaches his contact in the next 2 hours," Vincent said, "your network is exposed regardless of what you've done to my server tonight. The physical drive exists outside your reach." Damien said nothing. "Which means," Vincent continued with the cadence of a man who has rehearsed this speech, and is finding it landing differently than planned but delivering it anyway because it's all he has left, "that you have a choice. Let me walk out of here tonight, and I call Nathan and tell him to stand down. Or remove me from this equation and Nathan delivers the drive within the hour." He looked at Damien across the small room. "You need me alive," Vincent Graves said. Damien looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "How long ago did Nathan leave?" 14 minutes. He has a car." "Where is he going?" Vincent paused. The pause was the pause of a man recalculating, sensing that the conversation is not running on the track he expected. "It doesn't matter where he's going," Vincent said. "What matters is that I can stop him with one call, and you need that call made, which means—" "Marcus," Damien said into the earpiece. "Already running his vehicles," Marcus said. "I pulled his registered addresses from the server mirror. His sister's place in Warwick, his apartment in Boston, the safe house he used in the Nathan files. I've got eyes on all 3 through traffic camera access." Damien kept his eyes on Vincent. "He won't go to any of those," Charlotte's voice came through the earpiece. Damien went still. Charlotte was on the channel. He hadn't known she was on the channel. Marcus must have patched her in at the boatyard. "Charlotte," he said. "There's a location in the files," she said. Her voice was steady and clear over the earpiece. "I labeled it Contact Bravo. It's a marina in East Providence. Nathan met someone there twice, according to the communications logs. It's not registered to him or anyone in his network. It's his federal contact's location. If he's going to deliver the drive, he's going to that marina." Silence on the channel. "Marcus," Damien said. "East Providence Marina," Marcus said. 14 minutes from the compound by surface road." Nathan had a 14-minute head start. Damien looked at Vincent Graves one final time. Vincent's face had gone through another change. The contempt was still there, but the structure underneath it had shifted, the specific shift of a man who has just watched his last negotiating asset transferred to someone else's hands. Cole appeared in the doorway behind Damien. "Hold him," Damien said. He was already moving. Through the southwest office, through the corridor, through the compound grounds where his men held the perimeter in the cold night air, to the east wall, over, to the tree line, through, to the service road where Marcus had the truck engine running and had already swung it around to face east. Damien got in. East Providence, he said. Marcus drove. The night moved around them, streetlights and dark houses, and the flat expanse of Providence in the small hours. The city indifferent to everything contained in the vehicle moving through it at the edge of legal speed. Damien's shoulder ached. His hands were still. His mind was running the timeline with the specific cold efficiency that kicked in when everything else had been stripped away. 14 minutes. They had left the compound 6 minutes after Nathan, which meant Nathan had an 8-minute lead. The marina was 12 minutes away. Charlotte, he said into the earpiece. Here, she said. The federal contact at the marina. Did the communications log show a name? A pause. He could hear her breathing, controlled, thinking. An initial, she said. The logs used initials throughout. The marina contact was logged as DW. Description. Nothing in the logs. A pause. But Nathan referred to him once as the handler, not a term you use for a peer. Federal handler. Not a contact. A handler. Which meant Nathan Mercer was not simply selling information to a rival criminal operator. Nathan Mercer was an informant, had been an informant for long enough to have a handler with a meeting location and a contingency plan that predated his arrangement with Vincent Graves. 14 years. 7 of them inside Damien's organization. 7 years as an FBI informant embedded in the Cross Syndicate. The truck hit a red light and Marcus ran it at 2 in the morning without slowing because there was nothing coming and they didn't have the seconds to spare. And Damien sat in the passenger seat with this new architecture assembling itself in his head. Not the betrayal of a greedy underboss, but something older and more systematic. A federal operation that had been running inside his organization for nearly a decade, and Nathan Mercer standing at the center of it. The marina appeared ahead. Dark at this hour, lit only by the dock lights running in a line along the pier, boats sitting quiet in their slips. At the far end of the parking lot, headlights. A car, engine running, door open, a figure moving between the car and the dock. There, Marcus said. Damien was out of the truck before it fully stopped. He ran. Not the controlled movement of the compound. This was flat out, across the parking lot gravel, the ache in his shoulder irrelevant, his breath coming hard and visible in the cold air. The figure at the dock had heard the truck and turned, and Damien could see him clearly now in the dock lights. Nathan Mercer, in a dark jacket, with a small case in his right hand, and beside him a second figure stepping off a boat and onto the dock who was not a harbor employee. Nathan saw Damien. For 1 second, across 80 feet of parking lot and dock, the 2 men looked at each other. Then Nathan turned and ran down the dock. Damien ran after him. The dock was wooden, narrow, the sound of their footsteps percussive and chaotic in the quiet marina, boats rocking in the slipwake as Damien's run sent vibration through the boards. Nathan had a 15-foot lead and was fast. Not military fast, but the desperate fast of a man running from the full weight of what he's done, which has its own particular fuel. The second figure, the handler, DW, federal, stepping back toward the boat, was peripheral, not the target. Nathan reached the end of the dock. Nowhere to go. He turned. He was breathing hard. His face in the dock light was the face of a man who has run out of road and knows it, and the expression on it was not what Damien expected. It was not guilt. It was not fear, exactly. It was the exhausted, stripped expression of someone who has been carrying a double life for so long that the exposure of it is almost a relief. Damien stopped 6 feet from him, both men breathing hard, the water moving under the dock, the cold air making the breath visible between them. 14 years, Damien said. Nathan looked at him. 12, he said. The first 2 I was legitimate. You were with me. Yes. You were with me for 7 years. Yes. Nathan's jaw worked. It got complicated. Complicated, Damien said. I'm not going to apologize to you, Nathan said. The exhaustion in his voice was real. I'm not going to explain it in a way that makes it make sense. It doesn't make sense. 7 years with someone doesn't make sense when you're also... He stopped, looked at the water. I wrote that order on Charlotte Hayes because I thought she was a liability. I didn't know she was... He stopped again. Mine, Damien said. Yes. Nathan looked at him. I didn't know. It wouldn't have changed the order. Nathan was quiet for a moment. No, he said. It probably wouldn't have. The honesty of it landed harder than a lie would have. The case was still in Nathan's right hand. Small, black, the physical drive inside it. Damien looked at it. Nathan looked at Damien's face and then looked at the water and then looked back. And in his eyes was the specific calculation of a man deciding whether the thing in his hand is still worth what it cost. And Damien watched the calculation run its course. Nathan held out the case. Damien took it. They stood at the end of the dock in the cold dark with the water moving below them, and 7 years of everything that had been real and everything that had been a lie sitting between them in the night air. The handler, Damien said, not looking toward the boat. He'll stand down, Nathan said. Without me and without the drive, there's no case. There never was much of one. He paused. I was careful about what I actually gave them, careful for a long time. Not careful enough at the end. No. Nathan's voice had gone very flat. Not at the end. Damien looked at him for a long moment. Nathan Mercer had been 23 years old when Damien pulled him out of South Boston and gave him something that had the shape of a future. He had been, for a significant portion of the years since, genuinely effective and genuinely present in a way that Damien had read as loyalty, and that had been something more complicated. A man trying to occupy 2 lives simultaneously, serving 2 principles, and failing at both in the end. On the dock, with the drive in his hand, Damien made the decision that the next hour required. He made it without sentiment. He made it with the particular clarity of a man who has just spent the hardest 18 hours of his life and emerged knowing exactly what he is willing to lose and exactly what he is not. The drive was in Damien's coat pocket, and Nathan Mercer was standing at the end of the dock looking at the water when Marcus arrived at the dock entrance with Cole behind him. Damien didn't turn around. He kept his eyes on Nathan. Take him, he said. Cole moved past Damien and took Nathan by the arm. Not roughly, not gently, the precise grip of a man performing a function, and Nathan didn't resist. He went with Cole the way someone goes when they have made a decision about resistance and decided against it, the body already moving toward whatever comes next before the mind has fully processed that the choice was made. At the dock entrance, Nathan stopped. Cole stopped with him. Nathan looked back at Damien over his shoulder. The woman, Nathan said. Charlotte. He paused. I'm sorry about that part. Damien said nothing. Nathan nodded once, as if the silence was a sufficient and appropriate response. Then he walked with Cole to the vehicle and got in without further comment. The federal handler, D.W., whoever he was, whatever federal architecture existed behind that initial, had retreated to the boat when Damien ran onto the dock, and the boat had moved out of the slip in the intervening minutes and was now a running light moving slowly across the dark water of the Providence River. Not fleeing, just departing. The careful withdrawal of a man who understands when an operation has concluded and when presence becomes a different kind of problem. Damien stood at the end of the dock alone for a moment. The water moved. The dock creaked under his weight. His shoulder ached with a persistent, dull insistence that he had been ignoring for 3 hours and would continue to ignore for as long as necessary. He breathed the cold air in and let it out slowly. Then he turned and walked back up the dock toward the parking lot and the truck and the rest of what the night required. They returned to the compound at 3:14 in the morning. Vincent Graves was where Cole had left him, in the southwest office, sitting in the chair behind the desk that Damien's men had moved him to from the panic room, with 2 of Damien's people standing at positions that made the geometry of the room unambiguous. Vincent had been given water, which he had not touched. He sat with his hands flat on the desk surface in the posture of a man performing calm he does not feel, and when Damien walked in, he looked up with eyes that were doing fast, comprehensive assessment, looking for information in Damien's face and posture and the number of people behind him. He found what he was looking for. Nathan, he said. Contained, Damien said. Vincent looked at the desk. A muscle in his jaw moved. The drive. Damien placed the case on the desk between them. Vincent looked at it. At Damien. At the case again. The server was neutralized before we came in tonight, Damien said. The drive is in my possession. Nathan Mercer is in my custody. He sat down across from Vincent, and the sitting was deliberate, not dominant, not theatrical, just the movement of a man who is tired and has a number of things to say and intends to say them. Your compound is secured. Your operation is what remains to be discussed. Vincent was quiet for a moment. The performance of calm had dropped several degrees towards something more genuine, which was not calm, but its opposite. The stillness of a man sitting inside the full understanding of his own position. You're going to tell me the terms, Vincent said. There are no terms, Damien said. Vincent looked at him. The financial records Charlotte preserved cover 7 years of your operations, Damien said. Wire transfers, shell structures, the names of every person you paid, and every person who paid you. The communications logs include 14 months of your coordination with Nathan and a documented record of the arrangement you made to use an unborn child as leverage. He paused. That material goes to the appropriate parties in the morning, not as a negotiation, not as leverage, as a conclusion. Vincent's jaw tightened. You expose my operations. You expose connections to your own. Charlotte was careful about what she copied, Damien said. She was inside your compound for 7 months. She had time to be careful. He looked at Vincent directly. There is nothing in those files that implicates the Cross Syndicate. She made sure of that. Vincent processed this. His face moved through something that was not quite disbelief and not quite acknowledgement. She did that deliberately, he said. Yes. A pause. She's more dangerous than you, Vincent said. He didn't say it with admiration. He said it with the flat accuracy of a man updating a prior assessment. I know, Damien said. He stood up. He looked at Vincent Graves, at the man who had held Charlotte in a locked room for 7 months, who had pressed a weapon against her unborn child to try to extract information she had already hidden beyond his reach, who had built a trap designed to end with Damien dead and a child raised as a trophy. He looked at him with the complete attention of a man who wants to remember this face clearly and permanently and to understand exactly what it looks like when something that has cost a great deal is finally finished. He didn't say anything else. He left the office, and Cole and 2 others stayed behind, and the night moved into the next phase of its long work. At 4:20 in the morning, Damien walked into the boatyard office. Charlotte was awake. She had moved from the desk chair to the small couch along the wall. A narrow thing, barely large enough, and she had folded a spare jacket into a rough pillow and arranged herself sideways against the armrest with her coat over her like a blanket. She was not sleeping. Her eyes opened when he came in, and she looked at him with the specific look of someone who has been lying still in the dark, running mental calculations for the past 3 hours. Nathan, she said. Contained. Vincent. Finished. She looked at him. Her face was doing the careful work of reading what those 2 words actually meant, and she was experienced enough with the particular vocabulary of Damien's world to understand the weight of the second one. She looked at the ceiling for a moment. The drive, she said. He took it out and set it on the desk. The federal files on the drive go to the FBI field office in Boston at 9 this morning through an attorney, he said. Clean chain of custody. Charlotte Hayes as the documented source. Protected witness filing. You'll have an attorney-client relationship that protects you from any secondary exposure. She looked at the drive on the desk. Nathan was FBI. An informant. 12 years. She was quiet. He could see her processing it. The additional layer beneath the layer, the way betrayal has a way of revealing itself to be deeper than its first visible surface. He was never going to let Vincent actually kill you, Charlotte said slowly. Was he? He would have walked it back, used it as leverage with his handler. There was always a version where the assassination plan fell apart at the last minute, Damien said. Yes, probably. He was managing both sides. He was managing everything for a long time. She made a sound that was not quite a laugh. That's almost more insulting than if he'd just been straightforwardly corrupt. Yes, Damien said. She looked at him. What happens to him? Damien was quiet for a moment. He goes to the attorney in the morning along with everything else. His cooperation with federal authorities, his role in the Vincent arrangement, the standing order on you, all of it documented. He makes his own choices from there. He'll cooperate. He's been cooperating for 12 years. It's what he knows how to do. Charlotte nodded. She pulled the coat tighter around her shoulders. Outside, the water was moving in the inlet, and the sky had gone from black to the first suggestion of the color that comes before color. Not light yet, just the absence of full dark. I need to see a doctor, she said. There's a physician in Boston. He works with my organization, not on criminal matters, medical care for people who need discretion. He's been contacted. He'll meet us at a property in the Back Bay at 8. She looked at him. You have a property in the Back Bay? Yes. Does Nathan know about it? The question was not hostile. It was just Charlotte, still running the variables, still checking the architecture, still doing the work of thinking clearly in the most exhausted hours she'd had in a night full of exhausted hours. Nathan has never been in the Back Bay property, Damien said. It's registered to my personal attorney, and I've used it twice. Clean. She nodded. Can you walk to the truck? He said. She looked at him with an expression that communicated without words that asking a woman who walked 2 miles to a bus stop at 4 in the morning after 7 months in a locked room. Whether she could walk to a truck was a question that did not require asking. Yes, she said. She stood. The standing cost her something, visible in the way she placed her feet and used the armrest and took a breath at the top of the movement. But she completed it cleanly and picked up the travel bag and looked at him. I'm not staying in Boston indefinitely, she said. I know. I'll stay until the doctor clears me and until the federal filing is confirmed and until I know the evidence is in the right hands. That's enough, he said. She looked at him a moment longer, with the gray eyes that had been reading rooms for 2 years before he broke everything and for 7 months after and across the width of an airport terminal this morning, which felt like several lifetimes ago. Then she walked past him to the door, and he held it, and they walked out together into the last hour of the dark. The Back Bay property was a brownstone on a quiet street that had the particular charm of old money, worn stone steps, original ironwork, windows that let in the gray pre-dawn light, with the unfiltered frankness of glass that had been in place for 100 years. Damien's key worked the front door, and they went inside and he turned on the kitchen light, and Charlotte sat down at the table with the travel bag on her lap and looked at the room with the expression of someone encountering normal domestic space after a long absence from such things. The kitchen was clean. Someone came monthly to maintain the property. There was coffee in the cabinet and a kettle, and Charlotte registered these things with the quiet attention of a person for whom small certainties have acquired significant weight. Damien made coffee. He did it without asking. He simply made it and set a cup in front of her, and she wrapped both hands around it the same way she had wrapped her hands around the cup at the boatyard, with the particular grip of someone using warmth as a physical anchor. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. Outside the kitchen window, the sky was changing. The blue-gray of deep early morning beginning its slow transformation toward the specific pale that comes just before actual light. Not sunrise yet. The hour before. I need to tell you something, Charlotte said. He waited. She looked at the coffee. When Vincent told me you were coming to the airport to receive your arranged bride, she stopped, started again. I heard it 2 weeks before I ran. He told me to make sure I understood what I was to you. What I had always been to you. She looked at the cup. I believed him. Not because it was necessarily true, but because I already believed it. He just confirmed what I had already decided about what happened. Damien said nothing. I wasn't going to contact you, she said. Even after I had the drives. Even after I mapped the compound. I had no plan that involved you. I was going to Dublin, and I was going to have her in a city that didn't know either of our names, and I was going to build something entirely separate. She looked up at him finally. I wasn't going to tell you about her. He held her gaze. I know, he said. She blinked. You know. You bought 1 international ticket, not 2. You weren't leaving space for the possibility that anyone was coming with you. She looked at him for a moment, then back at the coffee. I'm telling you because I don't want to start... She stopped, chose a different word. I don't want whatever this is to begin with something I didn't say. Okay, he said, I'm still angry with you. I know. That doesn't go away because you had a very difficult night. I know that too. She looked at him across the table. The kitchen light was the specific warm yellow of an old fixture, and it made the shadows under her eyes deeper, and the bruising at her throat more visible, and the exhaustion in her face more apparent and more honest than any other light had made it in the past 24 hours, and Damien Cross looked at all of it without looking away. What did you tell the Hawthorne people? She said. Nothing yet. My attorney will contact them this morning. They'll want an explanation. They'll get one. Not a complete one. She almost smiled. The billion-dollar alliance. The Hawthorne network isn't going anywhere. The arrangement can be restructured. He picked up his own coffee. Without the marriage element. Will they accept that? They don't have a better option on the East Coast, and they know it. He drank. And I'll be significantly less agreeable on the terms. She did smile then, small, brief, gone almost as soon as it arrived, but real. You were always a better negotiator than a partner, she said. Yes, he said, without deflection, without qualification, just the word, carrying everything it carried. The smile disappeared and something more complex replaced it. She looked at the table. I named her, Charlotte said. In my head. I didn't write it down anywhere, but in my head I called her something. He waited. May, she said. It was my grandmother's middle name. She looked at him. I'm not asking your input on it. I'm telling you what her name is. May, he said. Something moved through him when he said it. A word that was also a person who would exist in the world, and who would have a name because her mother had chosen it alone in a locked room and carried it in her head for months as a private act of defiance. Here is someone who will exist, and I have given her a name, and that name is mine to give. May, he said again. Charlotte watched his face as he said it the second time. She watched it carefully, the way she watched everything, reading what was underneath the surface, the actual information rather than the presented version. Whatever she saw, she looked back at her coffee without comment. The doctor arrived at 8:15. His name was Alderman, 60s, slight, with the specific economy of movement that certain very skilled people develop, the movement of a man who has learned to do a great deal with very little. He spoke to Charlotte directly and without the careful hedging that some physicians employed in situations with adjacent criminal context, which Charlotte seemed to appreciate. He examined her in the back bedroom with Damien in the kitchen, and when he came out 40 minutes later, his expression was the expression of a man delivering a report on a situation that is serious, but not catastrophic. She's exhausted, and she needs rest and better nutrition than she's been getting, he said. The bruising on her throat is consistent with manual compression. It's healing, nothing structural was damaged. Her blood pressure is elevated, which I want to monitor over the next 24 hours. He looked at Damien. The baby is fine. Strong heartbeat. Normal positioning for 7 months. No indications of fetal distress. Damien let out a breath through his nose. She needs to stay off her feet today, Alderman said. She needs to eat. She needs to sleep. Actually sleep, not the vigilance rest she's been doing. And in approximately 6 to 8 weeks, she needs to be in a facility with a proper obstetric team. He paused. Tell her that last part yourself. She told me she'd heard enough from doctors. Damien almost smiled. I'll tell her. Alderman left, and Marcus arrived an hour later with a change of clothes for Charlotte. Practical, well-fitting, the result of a phone call Marcus had made at 7 in the morning, with the specific competence of a man who handles logistics the way other people breathe. Charlotte changed in the bedroom and came out looking marginally less like someone who had been running for 24 hours, which was itself a significant accomplishment. She sat back down at the kitchen table. She ate, properly. Not the way someone eats when they're performing the activity for someone else's benefit, but the way someone eats when their body has finally been given permission to acknowledge what it needs. Damien made eggs and toast because those were the things the kitchen had, and he was a mediocre cook who produced competent eggs, and Charlotte ate all of it without comment on quality. At 9:47, the attorney, a woman named Eileen Park, who had worked with Damien's legal interests for 6 years, confirmed by secure message that the federal filing had been submitted. Protected witness status for Charlotte Hayes. The documentary evidence package, Charlotte's 7 months of compiled records, the server mirror, the financial files, the communications logs, formally in the possession of the FBI field office in Boston. Damien showed Charlotte the message. She read it again, set the phone down on the table. She sat very still for a moment. Then she pressed both hands flat on the table surface, and she looked at the window, and she breathed, slowly, in and out, the measured breathing of someone giving themselves permission to feel the full weight of something now that it is finished, now that the vigilance that kept them moving can be, if only for this moment, set down. Her eyes filled. She didn't cry. The tears came to the edge and she held them there with the same discipline she had held everything for 7 months. And Damien watched her do it and said nothing, because there was nothing to say that was more important than letting her have the moment exactly as she was having it. After a while, she said, "Reston." "He's clear," Damien said. "He's out of the Nathan operation and out of my organization. I've released him from any standing obligations." She nodded. "The doctor who left the code in the examination room. Marcus is working on locating him. When we find him, he'll be compensated." She nodded again. "The guards Vincent had at the compound. The ones who, handled by the federal filing," Damien said. "The evidence covers them. That's for the appropriate authorities to process." She was working through the list. He recognized it. The methodical closure of open items, the checking of threads, making sure nothing was left dangling. He had seen her do the same thing with financial structures, with audit trails, with the complex layered architecture of the work she had done for him 2 years ago. Her mind had an allergy to incompleteness. "There's one more thing," she said. He waited. "Nathan's standing order, the one written on cross-syndicate letterhead." She looked at him. "That document exists in the federal filing." "Yes." "It's written as a legitimate syndicate operational order, which means when federal authorities process the filing, they will see a document that appears to come from your organization authorizing—" "My attorney flagged it this morning," Damien said. "The document is included with a full contextual analysis of Nathan's dual role and the unauthorized nature of the order. Eileen prepared a 15-page addendum." He paused. "It's messy. It's going to require ongoing legal management, but it's not a direct criminal exposure." Charlotte looked at him. "How confident are you in that assessment?" "Confident enough to still be sitting in this kitchen instead of a vehicle heading north." She considered this. All right, he said. She looked at the window again. The morning had fully arrived, actual light now, the kind that doesn't apologize for itself, coming through the old glass and making a rectangle on the kitchen floor that was specific and ordinary and completely unlike any light Charlotte Hayes had seen in 7 months. "I can't stay here," she said. "I know. I don't mean this house, I mean—" She stopped, started again. "I can't go back to what we were. I can't be in your life the way I was before. Whatever we are from here, it has to be different." "Yes," he said. "I need my own location, my own income. I need to rebuild what I had before. Not with you, independently, as a condition." "Understood. And I need you to understand that understanding that isn't the same as agreeing to it," she said. "I'm telling you the terms. I'm not negotiating them." "I know." She looked at him carefully, looking for the performance, the management, the version of Damien Cross who had learned to present exactly what people needed to see in order to keep them in place. He let her look. "You're not going to argue," she said. "No. Even though you want to. Even though I want to." She was quiet for a moment. "Why?" she said. He thought about how to answer that. He thought about the several versions of the answer that were available to him, the versions that would present well, that would land with the right emotional resonance, that would work to close the distance between them in the most efficient way. He had access to all of those versions. He had been building and using those versions his entire adult life. He decided not to use any of them. "Because you spent 7 months locked in a room because of a choice I made," he said. "And you came out of that room still thinking clearly enough to save both of us. And the only thing I can do with that is not waste it." He looked at his hands on the table. "I've been deciding things for you since the beginning. What was safe, what was necessary, what you could and couldn't be to me. That's done." She looked at him for a long time. "That's a very well-constructed answer," she said. "It's also true," he said. She held his gaze. "I know," she said finally, quietly, and then looked back at the window. Outside, a city went about its ordinary morning business. Footsteps on the pavement, a truck backing up somewhere on the next block, a dog moving past the window at the pace of a dog that knows exactly where it's going. The light on the kitchen floor shifted as a cloud moved past the sun and came back. Charlotte put her hand on her stomach. Not the protective gesture of the last 24 hours. Not the reflex of a woman bracing against threat. Just a hand resting on the place where her daughter was. A different quality of touch. The touch of someone who is allowed for the first time in a long time to simply be aware of something good. May. Damien looked at Charlotte's hand and at what it was resting on, and he thought about a child who would be born in approximately 8 weeks into a world that was already very different from the world that had existed 24 hours ago. a world with fewer specific threats in it, with more of the right information in the right hands, with a mother who had survived things that would have ended most people and had come through still intact and still clear, and still, underneath the exhaustion and the anger and the unhealed bruises, herself. He thought about what kind of person grows up knowing a mother like that. He thought about what kind of father that person deserves. In the afternoon, Marcus came back with news that the Providence compound had been fully secured, that Vincent Graves had been transferred to a facility that was not a police facility, but served a specific function in the resolution of situations like this one, and that the full criminal documentation had reached the federal office and been receipted. He delivered this in the living room doorway, and Charlotte was on the couch, with a blanket Damien had found in the linen closet, and she was not asleep, but her eyes were closed, and she listened to Marcus's report without opening them, and when he finished, she said, "The Graves Network's subordinate operators, the ones below his direct command. They'll fragment without central leadership." "Yes," Marcus said. "Some of them will try to fill the vacuum." "Yes. That's going to create a transitional period that requires management." She opened her eyes and looked at the ceiling. "You have capacity for that." "We do," Marcus said. He looked at Damien. The look contained several things: assessment, long familiarity, the specific quality of a man watching someone he works for move through something he didn't expect and coming out the other side in some configuration that wasn't fully predicted. After Marcus left, Charlotte was quiet for a while. The afternoon light had replaced the morning light, softer and more lateral through the west-facing window. "My things are in Dublin," she said. Damien looked at her. "I shipped a box there 6 weeks ago. The few things I'd saved from my apartment before—" She paused. "Before I went to Providence. Books. Some photographs. My grandmother's watch." She looked at the ceiling. "I'd like to have them back." "Marcus can arrange retrieval." "It was a long shot anyway," she said. "Dublin." "Yes." "I don't know anyone there. My contact was a woman I'd met once at a conference 3 years ago. I had her email address." She paused. "She didn't know I was coming. I didn't tell her. I was going to call from the airport once I landed." The plan that had existed before Damien Cross walked across a terminal floor toward her. No. The plan that would have meant Dublin and a woman who didn't know she was coming, and a box of photographs waiting at customs, and a city that knew nothing about any of this. "I'm glad you didn't make the flight," he said. She turned her head to look at him from the couch. He was in the chair across from her, and the afternoon light was between them. "I know," she said. "I am too." A pause. "I'm not ready to tell you what that means yet." "That's all right. It might take a long time." "I know." She looked at him. "You're being very patient." "I'm trying. It's strange." "I know that too," he said. She almost smiled again. The same small thing as this morning, there and gone, but there. "Your empire," she said. "After all of this. The network restructuring, the Hawthorne renegotiation, Nathan's absence from the operation. It'll be a difficult few months. But it survives." "Yes." She was quiet for a moment. "I'm not going to do your books anymore." "I know." "I'm not going to be embedded in the organization in any capacity." "I know. Whatever I do from here, it's clean. It's mine." "Yes," he said. She looked at the window. "I was good at it, though." She said it without vanity, just fact. "What I built for you. The financial architecture. It was the best work I've ever done." "It was the best financial architecture I've seen anyone build," he said. "And I've worked with people who do nothing else." She absorbed that. The acknowledgement sitting between them as something more complicated than a compliment. An honest accounting of what had been real and what had been lost, and what the cost of that loss had been. "I want to consult," she said, "not for criminal organizations. Legitimate corporate work. Restructuring. Forensic accounting. The kind of work that pays well enough that I can live where I want to live and raise her without financial dependency on anyone." "You'll be exceptional at it." "I know," she said. "I just wanted to say it out loud to someone." He understood. Saying a thing out loud to someone was different from saying it in your own head in a locked room. Both were real, but they were real in different ways. "May," he said. She looked at him. "I want to know her," he said. "I'm not asking for what I haven't earned. I'm not asking for anything with conditions. I'm saying I want to know her. on whatever terms you're willing to agree to, at whatever pace you're willing to set. He looked at his hands. Not because of what I owe, which is more than I can repay, because she's going to exist in the world, and I want to be in it with her. Charlotte was quiet for a long moment. That's going to be her choice eventually too, she said, when she's old enough to have one. Yes. And until then, it's mine. Yes. She looked at him with those gray eyes that had been doing the work of reading him for 2 years before everything broke, and all through last night and all through this morning and now through this afternoon. She read him. Okay, she said. Just that. Okay. Carrying in it the specific weight of a word that doesn't close anything but opens something, a door that wasn't there before, small and without any guarantee of what was on the other side, but present. He nodded. They sat in the afternoon light in a brownstone kitchen in Boston, and the city went about its business outside, and the only sounds were the ambient sounds of an ordinary day. Traffic, a far-off siren, the building settling, the light changing by increments across the kitchen floor. At some point, Charlotte's eyes closed. Not the vigilance rest of the previous hours. Actual sleep. He could tell the difference by the way her breathing changed, and the way her hand on the couch cushion went slack, and the tension that had lived in the corners of her eyes all day. Finally, for a few hours, let go. He didn't move. He sat in the chair across from her and didn't move. He had decisions to make, calls to return. The restructuring of an organization that had just had a significant portion of its architecture exposed and removed. The Hawthorne renegotiation. The management of the transitional period Charlotte had correctly identified. The legal process that would continue to require his attorney's attention for months. All of it would require him. He sat in the chair and let Charlotte sleep and did not move. And outside the afternoon light moved slowly across the floor toward the wall, and it reached the wall, and the light changed to the softer gold of later afternoon, and it kept moving. The city kept its ordinary noise. Somewhere in the weeks ahead, May would be born. She would be born in a facility with a proper obstetric team, as Dr. Alderman had specified, in a city that Charlotte would choose. She would be born, and she would have her mother's gray eyes, probably, and her mother's particular way of reading a room before she'd been in it long enough to have read it, or so Damien allowed himself to imagine. She would have a name that had been chosen alone in a locked room as an act of pure defiance and had survived to be given. She would exist in the world, and the world she existed in would be measurably different from the world that had existed 48 hours ago. Because a woman who refused to surrender had spent 7 months building the instrument of that difference, and had walked out of a compound at 4 a.m. and limped through an airport terminal and encountered a man she had every reason to avoid, and had made, in the armored SUV on the highway, a quiet and unceremonious decision to let the momentum move in the same direction she was moving. That decision had not been forgiveness. It had not been love, or not love yet, or not love returned to what it had been. It had been something more fundamental than those things. It had been the decision of a woman who knew how to survive to give something a chance. Damien Cross sat in the afternoon light of a Boston brownstone with that understanding in his chest alongside everything else the last 48 hours had put there. The weight of Nathan's 14 years, the architecture of Vincent's trap, the cold server room and the 30-second window, the dock and the water, and a drive that changed hands without either man saying what it cost. And he let it all be exactly as heavy as it was. He didn't try to put it down. Some things you carry forward. Some things you carry differently over time, not because they get lighter, but because you get more honest about the carrying. Charlotte shifted on the couch. Her hand moved to her stomach in her sleep, the unconscious gesture that had become as natural to her as breathing, and Damien watched it and said nothing, and let the afternoon go on turning gold and then amber outside the window. When she woke, an hour later, she blinked at the ceiling and then turned her head and found him still in the chair, and she looked at him with the specific look of someone who has woken up and confirmed that what they last saw is still there and is deciding what to do with that confirmation. "You didn't leave," she said. "No," he said. She looked at him for another moment. Then she sat up slowly and pushed the blanket back and put her feet on the floor. "I need more coffee," she said. "I'll make it," he said. He stood up and went to the kitchen. She followed him. They stood on opposite sides of the counter, and the kettle heated, and the light outside the window had gone to the amber of a late afternoon that was moving, like all things, toward evening. And neither of them spoke, and the silence between them was not the silence of things unsaid, but the silence of two people who have been through the same storm by different routes and have arrived, improbably, in the same kitchen, and are allowing themselves, carefully, without sentiment or any guarantee about what tomorrow looks like, to simply be in the same room. The kettle reached its sound. Damien poured. He handed her the cup. She took it with both hands. Outside, the city held its ordinary evening noise, and the last of the light moved across the floor and reached the baseboard and climbed the wall and went out. And the kitchen lamp came on in its place, warm and specific and enough. And May kicked once between them, a single strong movement that Charlotte felt, and that made her breath catch, and that she did not explain or name aloud, but that Damien saw register in her face and understood.